Will the meeting please come to order? Will all members of the council, as well as the public, please rise for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. The invocation this evening will be offered by Chaplain James Duke of the Metro Police Department. He's the guest of Councilmember Doug Pardue.
May we bow in prayer. Eternal, wise God, our Father, on behalf of all who gather here tonight, we say thank you. We pray your blessings and your strength upon this council as they have to make decisions of matter and conduct their business. God, we pray that you touch their hearts and minds with wisdom, that they would be fair in their decision making. Now, God, we ask your blessings upon our mayor, this council, and every department head of the Metro government. God, we thank you for life. We thank you for health. We thank you for all of our beings. Now, Father, we just ask you to go with us and stand by us. In the blessed name of our Lord, we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, we hope.
Without objection, we'll suspend the calling of the roll and ask the clerk to record the names of those members present throughout the meeting. Is there a motion for adoption of the minutes of meeting January 16th, 2018? Without objection, those minutes will stand approved as written. If you look on your agenda, there is a correction to the minutes of the meeting of November 7th, 2017. Is there a motion to approve the amendment? Moved and properly seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to elections and confirmations. Council Lady Haywood, is there a report from the Rules and Confirmations Committee?
Yes, Vice Mayor, there is a report. And before we get started with the elections and confirmations, there has been a correction on resolution number RS 2017-949. And the correction to the minutes is to reflect that Councilmember Weiner was not in attendance and her name has been removed from the notes for the resolution. So we voted to adhere to that correction.
All right.
Okay.
If we could add that committee report to the prior action, I would appreciate it. Council Lady?
Okay, first we have the Metropolitan Action Commission, and we have the reappointment of Ms. Gwendolyn Watson for a term expiring December the 1st, 2020, and we took it to a vote. There were 8 in approval and 0 against. And we move for confirmation.
You've heard a motion for confirmation of Dr. Gwendolyn Watson to the Metropolitan Action Commission. It's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Council Lady Haywood.
Next, we have the Metropolitan Arts Commission, and if I could call all names and move to approve them at the same time, if that would be okay.
That would be appropriate.
Thank you. First, we have the appointment of Mr. Toby Compton for a term expiring January the 1st, 2022. We voted 7 to approve and 0 against. The appointment of Ms. Bonnie Dow for a term expiring January the 1st, 2022. 7 in favor and 0 against. The reappointment of Ms. Mary Lena Romez for a term expiring January the 1st of 2022. We had 5 in approval and 0 against. And the reappointment of Mr. Hope Stringer for a term expiring January the 1st, 2022, 7 in approval of and 0 against, and I move for the approval of all 4.
You've heard the motion for confirmation of Mr. Toby Compton, Ms. Bonnie Dow, Ms. Maria Elena Ramos, and Ms. Hope Stringer to the Metropolitan Arts Commission. It's been properly seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Council Lady Haywood.
Next, we have the Hospital Authority and the appointment of Reverend Edwin Sanders for a term expiring July the 1st of 2022. We took it to a vote, and there were 7 in approval and 0 against.
You've heard the motion for confirmation of Reverend Edwin Sanders to the Hospital Authority. It's been properly seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Councilor Haywood.
Next, we have the Metropolitan Development and Housing Agency, the reappointment of Mr. Ralph Mosley for a term expiring November the 5th, 2022. He was absent due to illness. He has the flu, and we deferred it to the first meeting in March, and we took it to a vote, 7 in approval and 0 against.
Thank you, Councilor Lee.
Okay, next. Next, we have the Nashville Education, Community, and Arts Television, the appointment of Ms. Rita Mitchell for a term expiring February the 5th of 2021. We took it to a vote, and 7 in approval and 0 against. The reappointment of Mr. Tyler Pittman for a term expiring February the 5th, 2021, 7 in approval and 0 against. The reappointment of Mr. Joe Woosley for a term expiring February the 5th, 2021. We took it to a vote, and it's 7 in approval of and 0 against, and I move for the approval of all 3.
You've heard the motion for confirmation of Ms. Rita Mitchell, Mr. Tyler Pittman, and Mr. Joe Woolley to the Nashville Education, Community, and Arts Television. It's been properly seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Council Lady.
And it is Woolley instead of Woosley, by the way. Next, we have the Sexually Oriented Business Licensing Board, and we have the appointment of Mr. Rob McGuire for a term expiring October the 7th of 2020. We took it to a vote, and we voted 7 in approval and 0 against, and I move for confirmation.
You've heard the motion for confirmation of Mr. Rob McGuire to the Sexually Oriented Business Licensing Board. It's been properly seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Councilor Haywood.
Next, we have the Solid Waste Regions Board and the reappointment of Ms. Jennifer Hackett for a term expiring December the 15th of 2023, and we voted 7 in favor and 0 against.
You've heard the motion for confirmation of Ms. Jennifer Hackett to the Solid Waste Region Board. It's been properly seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Councilor Haywood.
Next, we have the Work Release Commission nominees of Sheriff Darren Hall. We have the reappointment of Mr. Dennis Blackwelder for a term expiring January the 1st, 2022, 8 in favor of and 0 against. The reappointment of Mr. Joseph D. Martini for a term expiring January the 1st, 2022. It was deferred to the first meeting in March. We voted 7 in approval of that and 0 against. The reappointment of Ms. Faye Ellis for a term expiring January the 1st, 2022. We voted 8 for and 0 against. And the reappointment of Mr. Doug Morgan for a term expiring January the 1st of 2022. And Mr. Morgan withdrew.
All right.
So I move for confirmation for those that we voted upon.
There's a motion for confirmation of Mr. Dennis Blackwelder and Ms. Faye Ellis to the Work Release Commission. It's been properly seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
It is our habit and tradition to recognize those members of the public who have been confirmed tonight. So if you will stand as I call your name and remain standing until all have been introduced, I would appreciate it. To the Metropolitan Action Commission, Dr. Gwendolyn Watson. To the Metropolitan Arts Commission, Mr. Toby Compton, Ms. Bonnie Dow, Ms. Maria Elena Ramos, and Ms. Hope Stringer. To the Hospital Authority, Reverend Edwin Sanders. To the to Nashville Education, Community and Arts Television, Ms. Rita Mitchell, Mr. Tyler Pittman, and Mr. Joe Woolley. To the Sexually Oriented Business Licensing Board, Mr. Rob McGuire. To the Solid Waste Region Board, Ms. Jennifer Hackett, and to the Work Release Commission, Mr. Dennis Blackwelder and Ms. Faye Ellis. I think that's everybody tonight. So on behalf of the citizens of Nashville and the Metropolitan Council, we would like to thank you for your willingness to serve and offer a round of applause. Is that true?
Yeah, she just didn't say it. And Marlene, you didn't want Sue Clark announced as well.
Okay.
It was on the agenda.
I know.
Should we
She
get
just didn't announce it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Councilman Elrod, has your guest come back in the room yet? All right. Council Lady Haywood? I'd like to confirm that Ms. Sue Clark withdrew from the Metropolitan Action Commission as well. Is that correct?
Yes, she withdrew. You're exactly right. We like to confirm that.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, if you can note that
Thank you.
on the agenda. Thank you. Councilman Elrod, I believe you have a guest here, and my handwriting is both illegible and I'm not sure how to pronounce the name. So, but Councilman Elrod has a scout visiting tonight. Sam Rajpundit, I think is that even close? So we welcome you tonight. I'm sure you're here to earn a merit badge or something. So thanks a lot for attending our meeting tonight. Thank you. That brings us to resolutions on public hearing. RS 2018-999, Councilman O'Connell exempts Germantown Bar located at 1318 6th Avenue North from the minimum distance requirements for obtaining a beer permit. Councilman O'Connell.
I'm happy to yield my time to Councilman Elrod. I'd like to open the public hearing, please. Or actually, sorry. Yeah, I guess we have been, let's get the committee reports, please.
Councilor Roberts.
Public Safety and Beer voted 5 in favor, 0 against for the amendment.
Okay, Councilman.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I'd like to open the public hearing, please.
Thank you, Councilman. Would all those in favor of RS 2018-999, please raise your hands. Those opposed? I didn't see any opposed. Did you, Councilman?
I did not.
Seeing none opposed, to those in favor?
Are you all opposed? Okay, yeah.
Okay, well, hold on. Are y'all opposed? Okay, we'll do the in favor first. So if, because I did see one hand in the back who was in favor. So if those in favor would like to come forward to speak.
Vice Mayor, council members, good evening. My name is Curtis Harrington of the Nashville law firm Farmer, Purcell, White, Lassiter. I am the attorney for the Germantown Commons Homeowners Association. And per Councilman O'Connell's request, I'm going to speak very briefly and address the amendment to tonight's resolution. My client, Germantown Commons Homeowners Association, has had its own differences and concerns with the Germantown restaurant, the applicant, particularly in the areas of fear of light and noise pollution in the quiet, historic Germantown neighborhood. However, the parties have worked in good faith and agreed upon measures and terms which are memorialized in a settlement agreement, which is attached to the amendment to this evening's resolution. It is the intent of the parties for the settlement agreement to serve as an amendment to the resolution so that the terms of the settlement agreement can serve as conditions of the Germantown restaurant's beer permits. This way, if it is determined at some future date that there are breaches of terms of the settlement agreement, enforcement by the Metro Nashville Beer Board can take place. Thank you very much.
Mr. Vice Mayor, council people, thanks for giving us a chance to talk tonight. I'm the operating partner and for the Germantown Bar that's now the Germantown Depot. This has been a long process, and everyone knows the area of Germantown's really changed a lot. And with the work of Councilman O'Connell, former Mayor Purcell, Curtis, and the immediate neighbors to our side at the Germantown Commons, we've worked out a nice agreement to where we ought to happily enjoy beverages and food, and everybody should get along. So I would appreciate your support in this resolution and allowing our business to continue. Just so you know, there are already 2 operating licenses serving beer on our property. This property was a former manufacturing spot that we've spent in excess of $6 million in developing. So I think it's going to be a nice asset to the tax collections in the area of Germantown and a nice asset to the neighborhood. And we certainly do not want to operate a business that doesn't welcome our neighbors. So our job is to make sure that we operate it in a way that they feel comfortable coming in and being beside us. So thanks a lot for your time and consideration.
Mr. Hobbs, if you could state your name and address.
Yes,
many
sir.
of us know you, but maybe not all of us.
All right, thanks. My name is Barrett Hobbs, 124 Spring Valley Road, Nashville, 37214.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Seeing no one else in support, would those in opposition please come forward?
Thank you. My name is Dan Slattery, and I live at 1313 Fifth Avenue North in the Germantown neighborhood. I am here tonight to speak about this resolution, which again is a resolution exempting the Germantown Bar from the minimum distance requirements for obtaining a beer permit. It's an exemption under the code, a special license to do something that's not permitted ordinarily. I do understand that an agreement was reached between the bar and certain neighbors of the bar, where Germantown Commons, the neighbors, dropped their legal challenges in exchange for some improvements to the site designed to reduce noise levels and other problems associated with the bar. We support the efforts of our neighbors, the Germantown Commons, and we're pleased they obtained some concessions, but no other neighbors in the neighborhood are parties to that agreement. So we respectfully exercise our right to voice our opinions tonight. My home is less than a half a block from this bar, close enough to have received in the mail this special notice as to this resolution, close enough to be significantly impacted by the operations of this bar. I strongly urge you to vote no on this resolution and to not allow the Germantown Bar to skirt the distance requirements of the municipal code. The bar should operate within the bounds of the law. They already have 2 operating permits, as he indicated. The bar is already in operation. Why should you give them another beer permit that doesn't comply with the code? In casting your vote, I ask you to consider especially the surrounding community and its essential character. This is in the heart of Germantown. It is primarily a residential neighborhood with a healthy mix of single-family homes, townhomes, condos, and apartments. Many residences with historic character. There are also some office and retail uses, including many restaurants. The zoning in the area, which is notable, is mostly MUN, or in the case of this particular property, MUNA, meaning mixed-use neighborhood, which the code says is intended for low-intensity mixture of residential, retail, and office uses. We live in a tranquil neighborhood with low-key retail, including restaurants that serve the community in a manner that generally is harmonious. Now, this business has been in operation. They're not asking for a permit to start operating. As the owner indicated, they have 2 licenses already. And by my observation, it already is out of sync with the character of the neighborhood as well as applicable zoning. So there's no good reason to grant them another license to worsen an already bad situation for residents. There's no doubt about it, the Germantown Bar, which has recently been recast as the Depot, is a large bar tavern complex which incorporates multiple buildings and an expansive open-air beer garden. By its layout and design, including walls filled floor to ceiling with beer and alcohol signs of all types and social media marketing on its Facebook page that emphasizes alcohol and heavy drinking, it's clearly intended to operate as a high-intensity bar along the lines of the large bars and saloons on Lower Broadway. Although apparently it holds itself out as primarily a restaurant, this is almost laughable, considering that it really is a bar, a large bar designed for maximum use, and an operation which is not harmonious with the surrounding community. Thank you. I urge you to vote no on this resolution.
Thank you.
I'm Burdell Campbell, and I live at 1217 Fifth Avenue North. We decided in the neighborhood last night at a meeting that 2 of us would come. We represent a room full of Germantown residents who are not in favor of this variance. And we can provide names, but we thought it was doing you a favor and this crowd a favor not to have a long line of people saying the same thing over and over. Now, my husband and I moved to downtown soon after the Germantown area was put on the National Register of Historic Places in 1979. That was 37 years ago. Some few of you out there may recall what North Nashville was like before Germantown. Most of you have no idea. There was not a problem that relates to inner city living that we didn't face every day. And we proceeded to tackle the problems one at a time, searching for solutions, learning what metro agencies existed and how they could be partners with us, and we needed helpers. We liked being downtown, being a part of rescuing a significant part of Nashville's history. We loved calling Germantown home. And I think you'll agree that Germantown has come a long way. But back to those problem years. I look back, those big challenges, big issues, and there were no small ones. We never encountered anything such as the knotty bunch of problems that this Germantown bar that we've been faced with them. Continuous, serial, endless non-compliance. The neighborhood invites all developers that come in to share with our group their plans and their intentions, and we work with them. This project has been a total exception. In view of this poor performance, we get this request for a variance. Here we're pushing for compliance, and we turn around and we're asked to okay it for there to be no compliance. We feel that the reasoned thinking and distances that were established when this requirement was made that separated a bar from a residential district was a sound basis, and that it's just as applicable now as it was when it was passed. There are numerous exceptions, carefully thought out reasons that are itemized in the amendments to this that can be variances granted based on those. Germantown Bar doesn't fit any of the amendments. We respectfully ask that you not approve this for this facility. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Always nice to have you. Declare the public hearing closed. Councilman O'Connell.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I would like to move approval with a brief comment.
You want to amend it first?
Oh, right. Thank you. We did this in committee, and I forgot about that. There is an amendment to Mr. Harrington's point about an attachment of the exhibits representing that agreement. So I guess I would like to move the amendment to the resolution.
There's a motion to amend. It's properly seconded. All in favor? Opposed? You're on your resolution as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I would like to move the resolution as amended. With a brief comment, please.
Floor is yours.
This one is, I would rate as probably the second most difficult thing we have done in all of Germantown that involves the work of this body and parties in the neighborhood seeking to effectively represent change to the neighborhood. In this case, I think, taking as a whole the work of Germantown Commons as an HOA and the dozens of neighbors represented there who are most proximate to this as a large group, I think represents the best possible effort to ensure that the Germantown Depot will in fact operate as a good neighbor. Germantown Commons in engaging Mr. Harrington and Farmer Purcell was also financially supported by Historic Germantown. I have spoken at length to both Ms. Campbell and Mr. Slattery outside of the context of tonight's meeting. I admit I was unaware that there were a group of neighbors also expressing that dissatisfaction with the outcome of the resolution and the agreement that's been executed between the two parties. I think it's worth following up with those folks, but we've already, this is a process that has spanned the better part of a year, and I think this executed agreement represents the best possible step forward for a commercial entity that is intent on doing business in this location and the protections that the neighbors immediately adjacent to it deserve. So I'd like to renew that motion of support. Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor.
There's a motion to approve. It's properly seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Council Lady Karen Johnson would like to be noted as abstaining. That brings us to bills on, motion carries. That brings us to bills on public hearing. BL 2017-1003, Councilman Hastings. Approved with conditions, disapproved without by the Planning Commission 6 and 0. Changes 0.33 acres from R6 to SP zoning for properties located at 2021 12th Avenue North to permit up to two-family residential units. Councilman Hastings.
Thank you, Mr. President. We'd like to open a public hearing, please.
All those in favor of BL 2017-1003, please raise your hands. Those opposed? Seeing none opposed, do those in favor wish to speak? Declare the public hearing closed. Councilman Hastings.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. I would like to move for approval.
There's a motion to approve. It's properly seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. BL 2017-1023, Councilman Kendall. Approved with conditions by the Planning Commission 7 and 0. Changes 0.54 acres from CS to MULA zoning for properties located at 1100, 1102, and 1104 Buchanan Street. Councilman Kendall.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'd like to open public hearing.
All those in favor of BL 2017-1023, please raise your hands. Those opposed? Seeing none on either side, declare the public hearing closed. Councilman Kendall.
I'd like to move approval.
There's a motion to approve. It's properly seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. BL 2017-1038, Councilman Hastings. Approved by the Planning Commission 6 and 0. Changes 0.29 acres from RS 7.5 to R8A for property located at 1227, 1227B, and 1229 North Avondale Circle. Councilman Hastings. Oh, sorry about that. There you go. My bad.
All right. Thank you again, Mr. President. We'd like to open the public hearing.
All those in favor, BL 2017-1038, please raise your hands. Those opposed? Seeing none on either side, declare the public hearing closed. Councilman Hastings.
All right. Thanks again. We'd like to move for approval.
Motion to approve is properly seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. BL 2017-1039, Councilman Kendall. Approved with conditions by the Planning Commission 6, 0, and 1. Changes 2.12 acres from IR to MUGA zoning for property located at 607, 608, and 616 25th Avenue North and 25th Avenue North unnumbered. Councilman Kendall.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'd like to open public hearing, please.
All those in favor of BL 2017-1039, please raise your hands. Those opposed? Seeing none opposed, do those in favor wish to speak? Declare the public hearing closed. Councilman Kendall.
Move approval.
There's a motion to approve. It's properly seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. BL 2017-1040, Council Lady Lee, approved with conditions, disapproved without by the Planning Commission 8 and 0. Changes 20.9 acres from AR2A to SP zoning for property located at 3461 Hamilton Church Road to permit 158 residential units. Council Lady Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I'd like to open up the public hearing.
All those in favor of BL 2017-1040, please raise your hands. Those opposed? Seeing none opposed, do those in favor wish to speak? Declare the public hearing closed. Council Lady Lee.
I'd like to move for approval with a brief explanation.
Floor is yours.
We had a meeting, and a lot of people thought that we needed to have more than a week's notice. So we're going to open this up again to talk about this so that all of my residents will be able to be heard. Thank you. Move approval.
There's a motion to approve. It's properly seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. BL 2000, sorry? BL 2000, I was going to say that. BL 2018-1042, Council Lady Karen Johnson, approved by the Planning Commission 10 and 0. Changes 6.28 acres from R20 to IR zoning for property located at 1075 and 1095 Reynolds Road. Council Lady Karen Johnson.
I'd like to move for the open the public hearing.
Thank you, Council Lady. All those in favor of BL 2018-1042, please raise your hands. Those opposed? Seeing none opposed, do those in favor wish to speak? Declare the public hearing closed. Council Lady Johnson.
I move for approval, Vice Mayor.
There's a motion to approve. It's properly seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. BL 2018-1043, Council Lady Blaylock, disapproved by the Planning Commission 6 and 0. Changes 0.82 acres from CS and RS10 to SP zoning for property located at 5200 Knowlesville Pike to permit used automobile sales. Council Lady Blaylock.
Thank you. Please open the public hearing.
I think we need to see the slides before the public hearing. I think that's how we're supposed to do it.
This is a request to rezone property to an SP to permit automobile sales. The Planning Commission recommendation was to disapprove. The current zoning is CS on part and RS10 on the rear. The policy is T3 suburban mixed-use corridor along the front and T3 suburban neighborhood maintenance on the rear. The Planning Commission analysis looked at the existing site conditions, the land use policy, and the conditions that would be required to develop under the zoning, and found that given the policy of neighborhood maintenance, which does not support the use, that it was inconsistent with the policy and therefore recommended disapproval.
Thank you. Councilor Blaylock.
Thank you. Open the public hearing, please.
All those in favor of BL 2018-1043, please raise your hands. Those opposed? Okay, with those in favor, please come forward to speak. I'm sorry. There you go. Start again.
Good evening. My name is Jager Salmon, and I'm the owner of the property, 5200 Knowlesville Road, Nashville, Tennessee, 37211. It's currently being used as a car dealership. There's a separate piece of land that is not being used for anything else. And tonight, really, I'm here to request that not to build anything on the property, but to only expand the parking lot so that I can increase my inventory and hopefully increase my sales and therefore increase more revenue for the city. To my knowledge, this property has never been built on and cannot be used for anything else currently zoned for. The commercial property line, according to the city map, for the neighboring businesses extends much further back. If you look at the pictures in the map, if you want to pull that back up. We will do whatever it takes to be a good neighbor. We've gone to the neighbors. We've got most of their approvals. One person that may be here tonight did support the decision, but has backed out on his decision. The council lady who does not support car dealerships is supporting me on this. We will do whatever it takes to cooperate. Currently, there is a new fence and trees planted to separate the property from the resident property. This parking expansion change will be more quieter for the neighbor than to build anything else on it. Your support in making this zoning change will be greatly appreciated. Thank you very much.
Seeing no one else in favor, those in opposition, please come forward. Where is it on there? So it's on the consent right now? Floor is yours, sir.
My name's Joe McCormick. I live 323 April Lane, which is adjacent to this piece of property, 20 feet from my house. My old house used to sit on that piece of property. It is residential. There's no one I know of in the community that's for this change. He's been parking cars already on the street in the grass, and that's against the codes. And as like I said, what's it going to do to my property value? And I've been in this place for 71 years, and there's nothing ever been there but a house. I thank you, sir. Thank you, council.
Thank you. Seeing no one else in opposition, declare the public hearing closed. Council Lady Blaylock.
Move for approval with a brief explanation.
Floor is yours.
So just want to let everybody know, yes, I'm actively working to try to get rid of car lots on Nolensville Road. This particular property is a very small piece of property behind a current car lot already. The commercial property right beside of it goes back even further than the little piece that we're wanting to rezone. Initially, I went over to Joe, and he was okay with this. And the reason why I think he has changed his mind is that there was some zoning issue or some codes issues that the current owner was, I guess, disobeying. So we have addressed those, and my goal is that these two neighbors will be able to be good neighbors together. So I'll continue to work with them on that, but I would move for approval tonight.
There's a motion to approve. It's properly seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Madam Clerk, if you open the machine. Madam Clerk, if you'll close the machine.
26 in favor, 4 against, 3 abstentions.
Motion carries. Bill 2018-1044, Council Lady Van Rees. Approved by the Planning Commission 7-0-1. Changes 32.4 acres from CS to MUGA zoning for property located at 721 Madison Square. Council Lady Van Rees.
Open the public hearing, please.
All those in favor of Bill 2018-1044, please raise your hands. Opposed? Seeing none opposed, do those in favor wish to speak, declare the public hearing closed. Council Lady Van Rees.
That's fantastic. I'd like to move approval with a brief comment.
Floor is yours.
I just wanted to thank everybody who came out to the Madison meeting concerning this property. It's not every day that you have over 100 people show up in favor of something, and so I wanted to thank all of our neighbors for the decades of attention that this particular property has given, as well as the owners and their family for wanting to move things forward. This is the Madison Square Shopping Center, and we're looking forward to it being a possible transit-oriented development in the future. And with that, I appreciate my colleagues' vote in approval.
There's a motion to approve. It's properly seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. BL 2018-1045, Councilman Glover. Approved with conditions, disapproved without by the Planning Commission 9-1. Changes 69.76 acres from RS5 to SP zoning for property located at Earhart Road, unnumbered, south of John Hager Road, to permit up to 146 single-family lots and 18 single-family attached lots. Not sure what the difference is, but I'm sure somebody does. Councilman Glover, roll with it.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'm going to ask to defer this until the first meeting in March for the public hearing there, but I would also like to just give a brief explanation. I think it's important for everybody to understand in my district, this project has been being worked on for years, and the latest owner literally worked with planning for an extensive amount of time before they came up with a plan. We were supposed to have a public hearing, or actually a public meeting a while ago, a couple of weeks ago, I should say. We had the snow, we had various things that occurred, and we weren't able to do that. So I asked the developer to please defer. I told him I was going to defer this. We are having the meeting on February 21st, and I look forward to hearing what people have to say. And with that, I move the deferral. Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Motion to defer to the March public hearing is properly seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. BL 2018-1046, Councilman Cooper. Approved with conditions, disapproved without by the Planning Commission, 10-0. Changes 14.90 acres from R40 to SP zoning for property located at 6404 Eaton's Creek Road and Eaton's Creek Road unnumbered, west of Whites Creek Pike, to permit one single-family residential unit and a maximum of 10,000 square feet of commercial indoor and outdoor amusement. Councilman Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. And my first action as a District 1 councilman, I would like to open the public meeting.
All those in favor of BL 2018-1046, please raise your hands. Those opposed? I didn't see anybody opposed, did you? Seeing none opposed, those in favor wish to speak. Declare the public hearing closed. Councilman Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I would move for approval.
There's a motion to approve. It's properly seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Councilman. BL 2018-1047, Councilman Sledge. Approved by the Planning Commission, 8-0. Changes 0.54 acres from SP to R6A zoning for property located at 20, 22, and 24 North Hill Street. Councilman Sledge.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I'd like to open the public hearing.
All those in favor of BL 2018-1047, please raise your hands. Those opposed? Seeing none on either side, declare the public hearing closed. Councilman Sledge.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. Move approval.
There's a motion to approve. It's properly seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. BL 2018-1048, Councilman O'Connell. Approved by the Planning Commission, 8-0. Changes 49.46 acres from R6 to R6A zoning for various properties located east of Charles E. Davis Boulevard. Councilman O'Connell.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I'd like to open the public hearing, please.
Would all those in favor of BL 2018-1048, please raise your hands. Those opposed? Seeing none on the other side, correct? I didn't see anybody, did you? I declare the public hearing closed. Councilman O'Connell.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I'd like to move approval of the brief comment.
The floor is yours.
This is the last of really 4 of these projects where we have moved urban neighborhoods with large contiguous R6 zoning parcels to R6A, an alternative zoning district that basically promotes walkability. This one is in the Napier community, and we had a good community meeting out there, answered a lot of questions. I've stayed in touch with neighbors in the community. I think just like Councilman Sledge and I, as we collaborated to begin this project in Edge Hill over a year ago, and then have carried it on through both Salem Town and historic Buena Vista now. And we have already seen a positive impact in terms of preservation of existing and emerging sidewalk networks. This has been a really great option as part of the planning and zoning toolkit. So I would like to move approval and renew that motion. Thank you.
There is a motion to approve. It's properly seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. BL 2018-1049, Council Lady Van Reese. Approved with conditions, disapproved without by the Planning Commission, 10-0. Changes 1.63 acres from R10 to SP zoning for property located at 1516 and 1518 Royal Street, 1518B Royal Crest Avenue, and Royal Street unnumbered at the corner of Royal Street and Worth Street to permit 17 multifamily units. Council Lady Van Reese.
Yes, open the public hearing, please.
All those in favor of BL 2018-1049, please raise your hands. Those opposed? I'm going to do that again. All those in favor? Opposed? We got one guy in the back. He's awfully slow. Can't tell if he's for it or against it. Can you tell, Council Levy?
I think he's good.
He's for it, I think,
Okay.
right? All right.
He'd be jumping up and down if he wasn't.
Seeing no one in opposition, those in favor wish to speak. Declare the public hearing closed. Council Lady Van Rees.
Yes, I'd like to move approval, pretty please.
This motion to approve is properly seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. BL 2018-1050, Councilman Scott Davis, approved with conditions, disapproved without by the Planning Commission 10-0. Changes 0.18 acres from IWD to RM20A zoning for property located at 820 Cherokee Avenue. Councilman Scott Davis.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'd like to open the public hearing, please.
All those in favor of BL 2018-1050, please raise your hands. Those opposed? Seeing none on either side, declare the public hearing closed. Councilman Scott Davis.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'd like to move for approval, please.
There's a motion to approve. It's properly seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. BL 2018-1051, Councilman O'Connell. Approved by the Planning Commission 7-0. Amends the Metro Code by removing 178.12 acres from the Adult Entertainment Overlay District for various properties located east of 21st Avenue North. Councilman O'Connell.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I'd like to open the public hearing, please.
All those in favor of BL 2018-1051, please raise your hands. Councilman Rosenberg. Councilman Rosenberg.
Councilman, you're too tall. Down and back, please.
All those in favor of BL 2018-1051, please raise your hands. Those opposed? Seeing none on either side, declare the public hearing closed. Councilman O'Connell.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I'd like to move approval with a brief comment, please.
You want to file a substitute too?
Oh, yeah. Well, I do want to do that. Let us move forward with the substitute, please.
There's a motion to substitute. It's properly seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. You're now on your bill as substituted.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I'd like to move approval with a brief explanation.
Where's yours?
This one is basically looking at an emerging midtown with multiple uses, a growing residential community that I think has further growth potential, and looking at how we can ensure that a corridor is full of uses that cater to all ages. I've worked with planning. In fact, sadly, this might be one of the last great partnerships of mine with Ms. Logan in the planning department. But this one, I think, will ultimately serve the constituents who are already there, as well as constituents who I expect will be there in the coming months and years. I think this still preserves the original intent of what the overlay was set out to do, but again, in working with the proprietors of the existing and growing business community as well as residential community in the area, I think this one has good public support, and I'd like to renew my motion. Thank you.
This motion approved is properly seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. BL 2018-1052, Council Lady Van Rees. Approved by the Planning Commission 8-0. Applies 0.92 acres of a historic landmark overlay district for property located at 312 East Marthona Road. Council Lady Van Rees.
If you'd like to take 52 and 53 together, I'm happy to do that. If that's okay with you.
They have different
Nope.
addresses.
Oh, all right then. I open the public hearing, please.
All those in favor of BL 2018-1052, please raise your hands. Those opposed? Seeing none opposed, do those in favor wish to speak? Declare the public hearing closed. Council Lady Van Rees.
Yes, I'll go ahead and move approval and make a comment on the next one. Thank you.
There's a motion to approve. It's properly seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. BL 2018-1053, Council Lady Van Rees. Approved by the Planning Commission 8-0. Changes 2.46 acres of a neighborhood landmark overlay district for properties located at 312 East Marthona Road and East Marthona Road, unnumbered, south of Old Tinker Boulevard. Council Lady Van Rees.
Open the public hearing, please.
All those in favor of BL 2018-1053, please raise your hands. Those opposed? Seeing none opposed, do those in favor wish to speak? Declare the public hearing closed. Council Lady Van Rees.
Yes, I'd like to move approval with a brief comment.
Floor is yours.
On behalf of the next door neighbor who is unable to be here because of a sick child, I'd like to just read his letter into the record, if that's okay with you, Vice Mayor. Okay. To whom it may concern, my name is Jeff Weems. I live at 308 East Marthona Road, next to the Rainbow Ranch property of which the owners are seeking a historic landmark overlay. My wife and I have watched the former Hank Snow home transform from a neglected property to one that we are proud to be neighbors of. Cal and Sandy Blakely have not just refurbished a home, they have truly restored the legacy of the home and the country music legend. They have recovered many of Hank's personal belongings and have decorated the house and property in a manner which illustrates his contributions to Nashville, the Grand Ole Opry, and country music. It is refreshing to see this type of involvement from owners, especially when we see other historic properties being razed or allowed to fall into a state of beyond repair. When we heard Jimmy Snow was going to put up the house for sale, we were worried that the property would merely be flipped and the historic value of the home would be lost. We are very happy with the result of Cal and Sandy's hard work and the attention given to Hank's long and storied career and the warmth they have shown to the neighborhood. Through our many interactions with the Blackneys, as we are confident in their ability to preserve this historic home and support Madison and the Nashville music history, we hereby support unequivocally the designation of historic landmark overlay on the property of 312 East Marthona Road, and that is signed Jeff and Chrissy Weems at 308 East Marthona Road. And with that, and on behalf of the entire community, I appreciate your vote on this matter.
There's a motion to approve. It's properly seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to the consent agenda. The following items are on the consent agenda: RS 2018-1023 through 1031, and 1033, 1034, 1037. Councilman Shulman, I've taken 1022 off. $1034 still on the it's on the consent agenda. All right, if you'll bear with me, I'll read through the consent agenda. The following items are on the consent agenda: RS 2018-1023, Council Lady Vercher approves a major cultural institution grant from the Tennessee Arts Commission to the Metro Nashville Arts Commission to provide general operating support. RS 2018-1024, Vercher, Gilmore, and Withers approves agreements between the Metro Board of Health and the Department of State for the provision of administrative law judges. RS 2018-1025, Vercher and Withers approves an amendment to a grant from the Tennessee Department of Labor and Workforce Development to the Nashville Career Advancement Center to provide reemployment services and eligibility assessment services to help unemployment insurance claimants to return to work. RS 2018-1026, Vercher, Roberts, and others, accepts a donation from E3 Construction Services in honor of Jadante Thompson for the use and benefit of the Metro Nashville Police Department's North Precinct. RS 2018-1027, Councilman Kendall, Vercher, and others, approves a Transportation Alternatives Program grant from the Tennessee Department of Transportation to the Metro Parks and Recreation Department to continue the 440 Greenway from Oman Street to Park Plaza to the 28th Avenue connector at Centennial Park. RS 2018-1028, Council Lady Henderson, Vercher, and Roten approves a grant from the Friends of Warner Parks to the Metro Board of Parks and Recreation to assist in the funding of a fully developed engineering study to more accurately estimate the cost of restoration of the alley in Percy Warner Park. RS 2018-1029, Vercher, Gilmore, and others approves a grant from the Best Friends Animal Society to the Metro Board of Health for a Lagunitas-sponsored Adopt a Shelter dog promotion. RS 2018-1030, Vercher, Gilmore, and others approves an intake diversion program grant from the PetSmart Charities to the Metro Board of Health to establish a safety net voucher program to provide low-cost medical services and behavioral vouchers to assist in decreasing the relinquishment of animals to Metro Animal Care and Control. RS 2018-1031, Vercher and Gilmore approves an amendment to a grant from the Tennessee Department of Health to the Metro Board of Health to provide nutrition, education, and services to eligible women, infants, and children, and breastfeeding peer counseling programs for citizens of Davidson County. RS 2018-1033, Council Lady Vercher authorizes the Metro Department of Law to compromise and settle the property damage claim of Ann Claire Hamilton against Metro government in the amount of $24,469.16. RS 2018-1034, Councilor Vercher authorizes the Metro Department of Law to compromise and settle the personal injury claim of Katina Williams against Metro government in the amount of $125,000. And RS 2018-1037, Councilman Rosenberg requests the Office of Emergency Management to determine the feasibility of upgrading outdoor early warning sirens, study options for siren activation, and present a report to the Metro Council regarding such upgrades. That is the consent agenda. Committee reports. Councilor Vercher.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. You don't want 1022. We pull that, correct?
Correct.
RS 2018, 1023, 1024, 1025, 1026, 1027, 1028, 1029, 1030, and 1031. Budget and Finance recommended approval, 12-4, 0 against. RS 2018, 1030, 1031, 1033, 1034. Budget and Finance recommended approval, 12-4, 0 against. Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Council Lady Gilmore, Health Hospitals.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Health, Hospitals, and Social Services for Resolution 2018-1024. It was recommended 6-4, 0 against for approval. Resolution 2018-1029 was recommended to the General Council body 6-4, 0 against, 1 non-voting. Resolution 2018-1030 was recommended 7-4 and 0 against. Resolution 2018-1031 was recommended 7-4, 0 against, and okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Roden, Parks, Library, and Recreation.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. Parks, Library, and Recreation Committee approved 1027 and 1028, 9 in favor, 0 against.
Councilman Withers, Personnel, Public Information, Human Relations, and Housing.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. The Personnel, Public Information, Human Relations, and Housing Committee met this afternoon, and we considered Resolution RS 2018-1024, and the vote on that one was 4 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. We also considered Resolution RS 2018-1025, and the vote on that one was 5 in favor, 0 against, and 0 not voting. And the reason for the discrepancy in those vote counts is that one of our members joined us just a couple minutes late after we had considered the first item.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Council Lady Roberts, Public Safety.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. Public Safety voted on 1026, 5 in favor, 0 against. And on 1037, 6 in favor, 0 against.
Thank you, Council Lady Roberts. Council Lady Haywood. Move approval of the consent agenda. Excuse me? Yeah, I said Haywood, Councilman Hager. That's all right. Council Lady Haywood. Would you please move approval of the consent agenda?
Are you sure, not Hager? With all committee reports in, I move that all on the consent resolutions be approved at this time, since all committee reports are in.
There's a motion to approve the consent agenda. It's properly seconded. Councilman Bednay.
Can I please be recorded as abstaining in 1025?
Madam Clerk, can you record that? Thank you, Madam Clerk. Otherwise, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. That approves the consent agenda. Councilman Schulman has requested that we roll RS 2018-1022 to the heel of the resolution agenda. Is there objection? Seeing none. RS 2018-1032, I think, is the next one, right? Appropriates appropriates $13,231,000 to the benefit of the Hospital Authority and $4,409,600 $1,276 to be paid directly to Meharry Medical College for services provided at Nashville General Hospital through June 30th, 2017. Councilor Vercher. $1032.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. There is a substitute, so I need to go ahead and move the substitute.
There's a motion to substitute. I'm gonna exercise my prerogative and ask Mr. Jameson to explain the substitute.
This, I believe, is a substitute that was discussed at yesterday's Budget and Finance Committee, originally introduced by Councilman Schulman and amended by Councillady Weiner. The substitute would submit the total appropriation of $17,141,000. That would be from $2,400,000 of impounded funds and the remaining $14,741,000 from the undesignated fund balance. As with all of the other substitutes, and the original $4.4 million would still go to Meharry Hospital as an indebted amount. Of the remaining $12.7 million, $4 million would be used for shortfall in patient revenue, and the remaining $8.7 million would be used for operating expenses. The substitute would eliminate the recital reference to the hiring freeze. It would result in a fund balance of, instead of 3.85%, 3.4%. And lastly, would create a strategic planning committee to be appointed by the Vice Mayor.
And we forgot committee reports.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Budget and Finance recommended approval, 12-4, 0 against, as the substitute as amended.
Right. Councilor Gilmore, Health Hospitals.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. The Health, Hospitals, and Social Services recommended the substitute as amended, 7-4 and 0 against. I want to make a brief comment about the committee.
Let me
Get all the committee reports?
Yeah, well, let me go back to the sponsor, and then I will come back to you.
Sure, thank you.
Floor is yours, Councilor. We need to still need to approve the substitute.
I move for approval.
There's a motion to approve the substitute. Is properly seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. You're on the resolution as substituted.
And I move for approval as substituted.
There's a motion to approve. It's properly seconded. I'm going to come back to Councilor Gilmore.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I just wanted to share briefly in our council committee and also in the budget committee yesterday. I felt good because we did a lot of good work as council members. I felt like we came together for the good of the city. So once again, I did acknowledge it, and we had a 3-hour meeting yesterday about this one bill. So a lot of time went into it, and I just wanted to publicly thank once again Council Members Schulman, Mendez, and Weiner. And then also I wanted to thank all the other council members as well, because it couldn't have passed out of the budget committee had we not all agreed on it. And it was something that we're really working on, and we all came together and recognized that we're very passionate and we're very committed to the hospital. So I just wanted to publicly acknowledge them, and we appreciate the hospital authority for coming up yesterday, as well as Meharry Medical College and General Hospital. So it seems like we're all working together. I look forward to us all continuing to work together to find solutions. And yesterday, we really found a solution now. So I was really proud of us, and that's the only comment I wanted to make at this time. Thank you.
Councilman Schulman.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor, members of the council. I think the council lady just took all my good stuff. So in case you did miss it, there was a real act of democracy yesterday on the floor of the Budget Committee and in the Health Committee. And I applaud the chair of the Health Committee for the discussions. We were here for 3 hours yesterday. There were serious negotiations going on, which is how sometimes these things really are supposed to work. That's how we get these things done. And in the end, there was resolution, which was amazing. I think everybody left here hopefully feeling that a tremendous amount of work went into this, and we came out with something that we could be proud of. Like the council lady said, I applaud Council Lady Weiner. Great. In terms of coming up with this resolution. Councilman Mendez, Rosenberg, Council Lady Gilmore, Councilman Cooper, Council Lady Dow, who added a piece to it, Councilman Pooley was involved, and everybody else in the finance, everybody who happened to be here, because it took a while, everybody was involved in this thing. Now, I did have one thing I wanted to point out that I think is important, and I think Council Lady Weiner may talk about it, but we actually changed something in from the prior substitute in terms of we called, it was a different name for the committee, but it's become called the Strategic Planning Committee. And I'm looking at Mr. Jameson, is that correct? Correct. It was the oversight. Okay, it was the oversight committee. I know had people had problem with it. The whole purpose is to come up with something, a strategic plan to make sure that people get together and figure out what we need to do in terms of helping General Meharry and so forth. Two, quickly, I would say that this is one of the most important things we were working on and have worked on. Serving the underserved, very, very important. I know we do a lot of contracts in here. With all due respect to my councilman friend in District 19, we talk about aerial encroachments all the time. We talk about sewer lines. This is talking about serving the underserved. These are real people who need health coverage. They need health treatment. We're talking about real, live people. And the last thing I'll say is that, and it goes along with what Council Lady Gilmore said, what was wonderful about this yesterday, what was wonderful about it in the Health Committee today, and in terms of just discussions on the floor today, we came up with a real solution yesterday, a real solution to a serious problem. And what was amazing was that once we figured it out, with Council Lady Weiner's help, discussions were held with all the parties, people agreed. That's what this is all about. So what I would say is that with everybody working together, we can actually do this. We can actually pull this off. We can help General, we can help Meharry, we can help the citizens of Nashville, we can help metropolitan government. This is a problem that we've got. The Strategic Planning Committee is going to help us, and it's going to help resolve or at least work through problems so we actually know, we have some idea of where we go with this. Problem doesn't go away, we know this, but this committee is designed to help. But working together, we can actually help and help address this situation. So I applaud the Budget Committee yesterday, I applaud the Health Committee, I applaud everybody, I applaud Meharry, General, Metropolitan Government, the Director of Finance. This was an effort to bring people together to come up with a real working solution. Very proud of it. Thank you.
Councilman Glover.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. A couple of procedural questions before we vote on this. And actually, let me make just a comment, if I may. For the first time, I thought yesterday, one of the things that I truly enjoyed was we were truly nonpartisan yesterday. We actually worked collectively to do the right thing. And so I'm not going to keep harping on the fact that how proud I was of this body, but I was very proud that we worked collectively. So procedurally, did we need to suspend the rules? I'm going to wait until Mr. James is listening.
He's listening.
Sorry. I never miss a word of yours, Councilman.
I'm sorry.
He was listening, just not.
No, I was going into a procedure. Did we need to suspend the rules in order, because there is an amendment here, number one. Number two, do we need to have the other substitutes withdrawn prior to taking this vote? And I'm just not certain of the answer, so I thought it was worth asking the question.
Yes and no.
So we're going to suspend the rules and forget everything else?
Council Lady Vercher was up here. If I can repeat an attorney-client privilege conversation, she is aware of the need to suspend the rules to move that substitute. You do not need to withdraw the remaining substitutes or amendments introduced yesterday.
Okay, so if we do not withdraw them, then they don't have to be heard. If we pass this substitute as amended, then everything else. All right, thank you, Vice Mayor.
So let's try and clean that up again. I was not aware that it required that it was a late filed substitute. So is there objection to the prior to the consideration of the substitute, which was late filed? Is there objection? Seeing none, we're not going to go back and redo it. There was no objection to that. Councilman O'Connell.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. Though I didn't stay for the entirety, after I think we lost a quorum for the Planning, Zoning, and Historical Committee that was to follow that marathon budget and finance meeting, I missed the final discussion that got to this. And I really do appreciate the work and remarks of both Council Lady Gilmore and Councilman Schulman. I think the greatest problem I have in this, right, is that we seem to be upholding this one portion of the community while I'm still looking at impoundments of hundreds of thousands of dollars that were supposed to go to uplifting the working people of Nashville through the Nashville Construction Readiness Fund, that were supposed to go to the creation of affordable housing through the Housing Incentive Pilot, right? So while there has been a grand bargain of sorts, and I think there has been a lot of problem solving done here, it is very, very difficult for me to look at this incredibly difficult situation and wonder if there is not more work to be done still after this moment to ensure that those funds get replenished. So if we carry forward with this version of the resolution, I think it is everybody in this chamber needs to redouble their commitment to finding some pathway to replenishing these funds, which still ultimately serve the people who need our work the very most in Nashville. Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Councilor Weiner.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'd like to ask a question of our department chair of finance, Ms. Lomax O'Neill, and that would be in response to Mr. O'Connell's statement, and then I have something to follow with. In terms of the impoundments, can you please speak to the extent that those have been drawn down to this point?
Yes, I can. We identified those programs because we expected those specific activities to have natural savings in those accounts for this fiscal year. And we deliberately selected those because we felt that they would have the least impact for this fiscal year. This does not mean that that funding won't be available next fiscal year. It just means that we had identified those as savings that to mitigate or offset the need to make the other appropriation.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So to that point, we have 4 months left in this fiscal year. And if the funds have not been drawn on, we're going to wait 4 months, and it will be a priority, and this is something we discussed last night. It will be a priority that we do two things, that we restore the money in the undesignated fund balance back above 5%, and that we also restore the funds in the impounded line items. So those two things we addressed last night. So that's the first thing. The second thing, as I sat here last night and we were going round and round and round, and the reason we were going round and round is we had different stakeholders with different interests in different parts of the room, in different parts of the county, not coming together. And so the purpose of the Strategic Planning Committee is for us to sit down between now and the end of June of 2019 and come up with a plan. We have a fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayers of Nashville, and it is our obligation to fix this, to figure it out with everybody at the table together with a professional who can guide the conversation, and let's fix this, let's make it work once and for all. And that's the purpose of the Strategic Planning Committee. The purpose of coming up with the $17.141 million is because 19.7 wasn't going to get anywhere. 13.2 wasn't going to get anywhere. So we had to come up with some sort of middle ground number that we could, for the short term of 4 months, rally around. So I would really appreciate your support so that we can finally, after years of wrangling, do the right thing. Thank you.
Councilor Withers.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vice Mayor. Even though this resolution does not come before the Personnel Committee directly, it does have a profound effect on personnel and metro government. And so I've made a request that HR Director Shannon Hall and Finance Director Talia Lomax O'Neill look at that and provide some communication to council members. I know we were receiving a lot of inquiries early on as to how this would affect certain employees and especially our emergency responder personnel. I appreciate that early communication that they sent out to us so that we could give at least somewhat educated answers about that to our constituents, as well as their willingness to appear this very afternoon in our personnel committee to sort of talk through some of those things. You know, it is a great day that we finally have reached some degree of agreement for the hospital, but I just want to emphasize that so much work lies ahead of us. We all will need to really double down over the next few months to see how we're going to reconcile this in time for the next budget. One of the things I was reminded of today is that hiring freezes do not require council approval. So sometimes when we request or as a council body make a financial decision, the finance department has to make very difficult decisions in order to make those checks not bounce. And so this does have an effect on personnel. Everyone is on board and trying to ensure that we're still able to provide the necessary services to our county, but it's still a very difficult decision from a personnel standpoint. The impoundment of additional funds obviously will have effects on metro departments as well as staff in some cases. At this time, in terms of potential hiring freezes, we don't know how long that will be necessary, but we will all need to revisit that as we look at our operating budget discussions, which will begin very soon. Once again, emergency responder personnel are not going to be affected. We will continue to hire people to make sure that we have those personnel resources to keep everyone safe in our county for now. One of the things that I did want to speak to a little bit is there was discussion yesterday about the removal of recitals from this resolution regarding hiring. I personally think that's a bad idea. I think that removing recitals about that doesn't mean that those personnel decisions go away. That I'm not going to, object to that immediately, but just wanted to put that out there that the hiring freeze and the personnel decisions are still going to happen. Just because we've removed that language doesn't mean that that's not going to happen. So again, I wanted to express my appreciation to HR Director Shannon Hall and Finance Director Talia Lomax O'Neill and their staff for working virtually around the clock with the council as this council was debating this decision up to the last minute yesterday. They have also been working very hard with their staff to see how they can make that work with the will of the council. I'm going to agree with Councilmember O'Connell that we all need to double down in our efforts to look at the budget in terms of how we can provide for all of our metro employees and provide services to all of our citizens throughout the county coming up in just a couple of months as we try to pass a budget in June. Thank you.
Councilman Swope.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Please mark me as abstaining from this vote.
Okay. We'll have a machine vote. Councilor Karen Johnson.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. One of the things that I am incredibly proud of for my entire time here in the Metro Council is to see that everybody is rowing in the same direction. This has been an incredibly difficult journey. I've seen the back and forth. I've been to some of the meetings. I didn't get to all of them. But one of the things I think is most important here is, even though Councilman O'Connell has mentioned many things that are priorities like affordable housing and other things in our city, yes, they are priorities. But I think people's lives are the top priority. And making General Hospital the top priority, I think, is the right thing to do. I am a patient of General Hospital. All of my doctors are at Meharry and General Hospital, Dr. Lanston, Dr. Edward R. Hills, and Dr. Donald Bruce. And so I have opted to always get my surgeries and my care at General Hospital. And why I share that is, it's not going to be known here just a hospital for the underserved. This is a hospital for everybody. And I encourage each of you as council members to not just talk the talk, but walk the walk and start being a patient at General Hospital. That's a step in helping us move in the right direction. I'm glad that there's a real solution, and I'm very incredibly proud of the leadership, most especially of you, Councilwoman Weiner and Councilwoman Tanaka Vircher, Councilwoman Erica Gilmore, Councilman Bob Mendez, Councilwoman Sharon Hurt, and Councilman at-large Schulman, and Councilman at-large John Cooper. All of you all have done an incredible job here, and it's monumental for our city. But like I said, I think we all can agree after we have gotten here that this is the top priority of our city. And all of the people that work for our city, I think, will agree that people's lives matter, and this is the right thing to do. Thank you.
Councilman Sledge.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I wanted to, first of all, I want to rise and say I'm supporting this bill. I'm supporting the substitute. I want to kind of mesh a couple of things that have been said previously based on, and the committee discussion that we had in health, which was a very, I think, robust discussion. One of the reasons I'm voting for this tonight is because, in essence, we are voting on a number to the hospital, right? We are voting on a number that's a little more than 17 million based on the feedback that they've given us. Everything else that's in this bill is at the discretion of the finance director. When we're talking about impoundments, that was a guide, and I think the finance director mentioned that in a memo. That was a guide to sort of where she was thinking to try and, quite frankly, affect this as little as possible, affect our day-to-day and affect employees. But we need to be cognizant that an additional $4 million that we're putting in on top of what was proposed by the administration in the bill calls for coming from this unencumbered or unassigned fund. I'm looking at Attorney Jameson just to be sure I'm not misspeaking, but the finance director has the power under the charter to go find these funds. And while we're giving guidelines and we're trying to be as transparent as possible with our constituents, I think we need to be as transparent as possible on this bill to say she may have to go find funds in places we didn't think about. And we need to be able to deal with that situation over the next 4 months so that as we're working on a budget, and if there are funds that we thought should have stayed in and they weren't able to, we're going to have to work through those realities. So again, I do appreciate all the work that the members have done on this, but I do think it's very important to acknowledge that there may be some things coming that we don't see right now. Thank you.
Councilman Hastings.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to rise and say, as a member on the Health, Hospitals, and Social Services, and also serving as a vice chair, it is very, very puzzling to me that we are still in a place to where we are finding other things and other projects to put in front of the health of everyday individuals here in our city, the people that we are elected to take care of. You know, one of the things that I wanted to just come out first, and especially as most of this body are liberal thinkers, and me, at one of my degrees, I have a degree in theology, and the major picture of Christianity has been put in a phase to where a man by the name of Jesus Christ was the largest libertarian person that was there. He took care of the sick. He made sure that the poor, he made sure that widows were taken care of. And we find ourselves being, as elected officials, putting ourselves in a place to where the health care of individuals are no concern of ours. This should have been dealt with even before. Before, when the budget came out of $55 million, we said no, that happened. Now we already knew that this was an issue that we were confronted with before. But now, all sides, we have transit, we have soccer, even though other constituents said those two don't mix. But any dollar that comes forth with the individuals of this city that pay taxes, that work here, that call Nashville home, should come first in front of all things. We have to fix that. In the charter of the city, it says that we have to have a hospital. What does that take place of? That takes care of the health care of all of our constituents in this city. We can't be Basel.
We can't be shut back. And first of all, before I am going to cut this short, but I will let you know today, this is a personal story for me because my birth mother is at Metro General Hospital right now. She was diagnosed with liver cancer. Those are things that we're dealing with. That's a personal thing for me. Number one on that is that all the constituents that are there, the doctors that are coming forth from Vanderbilt, the doctors that are there from Meharry, and all of the nurses are top notch. We ought to give kudos to our very own. We can't sit back and pretend that this is not an issue. We got to fix it, we got to vote for it, and we can't play with this any longer. Thank you.
Councilman Freeman.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I started out today as a hard no on this resolution, and that comes from several different reasons. But after listening to a few things that happened over last night, and then as well as just what Council Lady Weiner shared just a few minutes ago, the only thing that I would offer up is that with this, what is it, the Oversight Board or the Strategic Planning Committee, I would just recommend that we look for outside help. Because I know we've got a lot of smart, bright people in this room, but at the end of the day, our politics may get in that way. And it might not be a bad idea for us to look outside and find the groups that do benefit consultings. There are plenty of firms out there. I would recommend the company I work for, but that might be a little overboard. But I'm just telling you, there are businesses out there that do this work. I work in property, they work in benefits. But that's the only recommendation I would say, because we're talking about a lot of money here. And it's always, they always need a lot of money. Well, there are ways to make this work and make it viable. If we're going to be in the hospital business, then let's make it, let's make it right, let's make it work. So that's the only recommendation I would make, is that we use one of these 3 members from the council to possibly look to somebody that will volunteer their time, or if we can find a few dollars in that $17 million to pay for a firm to advise us as well. Thank you.
Councilman Pardue.
Call for question.
Question's been called. I'm sorry, Councilor Weiner.
I'm sorry.
Point of order?
Point of order. Just a quick clarification. Paragraph 3 references the independent consultant.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. That was just on the question, just on the previous question. Is that all right? That's all right. Well, I'm all right. So we're on the resolution as substituted. The previous question's been called and approved. We are now voting on the resolution as substituted. Madam Clerk, if you'd open the machine.
Substituted and amended, correct?
Just substituted. I think what happened was yesterday during committee, there was a substitute. It was amended in committee. Today, before the council, there was an opportunity to get a substitute completed. That is the only item that was moved today.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Madam Clerk, if you close the machine, tally vote.
36 in favor, none against, 2 abstentions.
Motion carries. BL 2000. BL 2000, I'm sorry. RS 2018-1035, Council Lady Vercher, Councilman Elrod. Amends BL 2014-926 to allow a yearly subsidization of rain barrels for residents of Metro Nashville. Council Lady Vercher.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. You want the committee reports first?
Yes, ma'am.
Budget and Finance recommended approval as amended, 12-4, 0 against.
Councilman Elrod.
Public Works recommended approval, 6 in favor, 0 against.
Councilor Vercher.
I need to move the amendment.
There's a motion to amend. It's properly seconded. All in favor? On the amendment or on the bill? There's a motion to amend. It's properly seconded. All in favor? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. You're on your bill as amended.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'd like to move for approval.
There's a motion to approve the bill as amended. Councilman Sledge.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I need to ask the sponsor if the funds for the subsidization come from the rainy day fund.
Boo, boo. Councilor Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. On 1034, for some reason, I was unable to vote. I would like to register my vote as yes, please.
On
34, Berkshire.
not 1034, is it? 1032.
Yes.
Without objection, Madam Clerk, can you record that vote, Councilor Roberts, as an aye, you said? Thank you. RS2, did we adopt that? Okay. Okay, it's been approved as amended. There's a motion to approve as amended. It's properly seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. RS 2018-1036, Councilman Elrod, Councilman Hager, amends BL 2017-984 to authorize record companies to charge a winching fee and an increased storage fee. Councilman Elrod.
Committee reports, please.
Councilman Hager.
Traffic, parking, transportation approved, 4-0 against.
Thank you. Councilman Elrod.
Public Works recommend approval, 6 in favor, 0 against, as amended. And I would move the resolution and move the amendment.
There's a motion to amend. It's properly seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. You're on your bill, your resolution as amended. There's a motion to approve the resolution as amended. It's properly seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. That takes us back, I believe, to 1022. Is that right? 1038. I'm sorry. RS 2018-1038. Councilman Pulley requests the Tennessee Department of Transportation to consider neighbors' concerns and prioritize certain features during improvements scheduled along Interstate 440. Councilman Pulley.
Please. Committee reports, please.
Councilman Bedney. I think this is one where you lacked a quorum, sir. You need to report that you lacked a quorum. 1038.
Yes, we had no quorum yesterday.
All right.
And can I say something about that?
If you'd like to.
I'd like to suggest that and I got this petition from many of the members, that we put the planning committee meeting before the budget committee. So I was going to ask you, Vice Mayor, if you will consider doing that.
I'll consider doing that. Councilman Pulley. I'm sorry, Councilman Hager. RS 2018-1038.
Traffic and parking, transportation approved, 4-0 against.
Councilman Pulley.
Is it okay to move approval in light of that?
All you require is one committee report from one committee.
Move approval.
It's motion to approve. It's properly seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. That takes us back to RS 2018-1022. Council Lady Vercher appropriates $15,303,700 from the General Fund Reserve Fund for the purchase of equipment and building repairs for various departments for Met government. Council Lady Vercher. There you go.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Budget and Finance recommended approval, 12-4-0 against.
Is there a motion?
I move for approval.
There's a motion to approve. It's properly seconded. Council Lady Murphy.
I missed the first part of the budget meeting committee yesterday. I'm not on that committee, and I was at another meeting yesterday afternoon. Since then, it's come to my attention that the salt bin that is referenced in our analysis is the salt bin in my district that serves West Nashville. I have spoken to some of my fellow West Nashville council members here tonight, and I don't think that any of us are aware of what the plan will be to be salting our West Nashville or the region or whoever that bin serves, how our districts will be serviced when we are in inclement weather. And I think that's very concerning to me, and I've got the impression that that is concerning to a lot of them. Additionally, this is a property that the administration has mentioned to me that they are interested in selling. It has been mentioned to me that there may be a community plan amendment needed, maybe a zone change on this property, but I have not had a formal meeting with the administration or the Planning Commission about the end result of this property. I have concerns that we were not discussed or consulted about what the new SALT plan will be when this bin is moved to East Nashville, to make sure that we are salted in a similar fashion that we are salted now. And so with that, I would ask Attorney Jameson what the appropriate way is to either remove the part of this resolution regarding the salt bin or the Public Works portion of this, if we can defer that part, or if I need to defer this motion for 2 weeks. I want to be clear, though, that I do not want to affect other important intimate needs in this resolution, such as replacing, I think it's a ladder truck that the fire department needs. But I know that there was some references, that there have been communications about this, but as I've found out since yesterday, no formal conversation has been had with me about this property and my West Nashville colleagues about the salt and safety of our street and inclement lab there.
It's my sense that the administration would accept and does not object to an amendment that removes the salt bins, the $500,000 for the salt bins from the 4% resolution in front of the council. It's not typical. Prefer something in writing, Council Lady. You need to move to suspend the rules to allow for a late filed oral amendment.
And I do apologize for suspending these rules, because typically I don't like doing that, but at this point, I would like to suspend the rules to have that verbal amendment.
Is there objection? Seeing none, there's a motion to amend RS 2018-1022 to remove the appropriation of $500,000 for the West Nashville salt storage bins. It's been properly seconded. Is anybody seeking recognition on that? Council Lady Dowell. There you go.
Thank you. I'm the one that brought up the salt bin, and I guess I brought it up because I sat on council some years ago and was involved when they talked about dispersing the salt bin in the community. And yesterday it was told to me by the Director of Finance that he had actually spoken to Kathleen and the council person about this piece of property, and everybody was supportive of it. I just want to say on the record that, I didn't mean any ill will by bringing up that we're spending $500,000 to move a salt bin. It just kind of bothered me the wrong way when we're looking at how to fund a hospital, how to provide housing for homeless. We have people asking for youth activities to deal with youth violence. And we continue to have all of these issues, and then we're looking at surplusing some property, not really being transparent about it, saying that we talked with the council member when I just found out now that we have not spoken with the council member. I think we can do better than this. So I full-heartedly support this amendment that Council Lady Murphy has put forth, because it is a concern. Once we move this salt bin, there's extra cost in getting services over to the west side from the east side of our community, and that's another cost to us. So I appreciate her stepping forward and saying that, and I support it. And I ask you others to support it as well.
Councilman Pulley, are you seeking recognition on this amendment? Councilman Pulley. I'm sorry, hold on just a second. There you go.
Just have a couple of questions I want to clarify before we vote on the amendment. I know that it has some ramification on the sale of the property, and I heard Council Lady Murphy's amendment is to pull the $500,000 out of the 4% resolution. And I understand that there will be some discussions later on. Moving forward, I just wonder if there's a way that there's a mechanism where we can defer that particular action and revisit it later. That may be a question for the Finance Department or Mr. Jamerson, rather than just eliminating this altogether. So I just want to clarify how that goes.
I think the only option would be, there's nothing that would prevent the department from refiling another resolution this coming Friday that brought that one back to the council at our very next meeting. So, pulling it out does not, because it's not an ordinance, it's just a resolution, does not result in any significant delay if the administration wants to pursue it immediately after this meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Councilman Withers on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. Just appreciate Councilmember Murphy bringing that up. I think neither Councilmember Davis nor I, who both have some public work functions in Districts 5 and 6 respectively, I don't think we've quite heard about that yet ourselves, so I think it is a wise move to defer this particular piece until we all know where our salt is going to be going, because we know we are having to use that quite a bit this particular winter. So I appreciate Councilmember Murphy for bringing that forward, and I support the amendment and encourage my colleagues to do the same.
Councilman O'Connell.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. Because he was briefly out of the room, I would like to bring to the attention of Councilman Sledge that this is really a wonderful opportunity for jokes. I've considered and rejected many myself, and I'd be happy to yield my time to
have a seat, sir. Have a seat. There's a motion to amend as previously recited. It's properly seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. You're now on RS 2018-1022 as amended. No other speaker seeking recognition. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to late filed resolutions. Council Lady Vercher.
Thank you so much, Vice Mayor. Is this mine?
Or Councilman,
I'm sorry.
This is late filed resolution.
Yes, I need to move. I asked to suspend the rules.
Is there objection to suspension of the rules? Seeing none, Councilor Vercher.
Apologies, my queue still has the other agenda. Yes, I'm going to ask.
Let me go ahead and read the caption just
Go ahead.
to make sure I'm doing my job. Resolution RS 2018-1039 establishes a special committee to investigate the circumstances involving travel and other expenses, including overtime expenses related to the mayor. Council Lady Vercher.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I asked our colleagues for support in this resolution today. I want to be clear as to what this resolution does. Went before the Rules Committee, and we had great discussion and dialogue as it relates to this. And we all agreed, and there was a consensus that we're not aiming in any way, fashion, to pursue any personal matters as it relates to the mayor. What we are trying to establish is public accountability. It would be an understatement to say that our community's heart is broken, and this resolution is an attempt so we can go along the path for healing. Our community is looking for us for leadership. Our community is looking for us for answers. And this is what this resolution does. You may be asking, why is this resolution needed? Simply this, it's going to establish a special committee. This is not the Budget and Finance Committee. I believe a council member tweeted that. That was tweeted incorrectly. This resolution established a special committee that will seek answers for many of our constituents are actually asking, and we don't have the answers yet. This resolution will put us on a path for healing. Simply that, we're not trying to get into anyone's personal matters. As it relates to the TBI, they are on a different path from us. They're their own independent agency. Their investigation is their investigation, and they do not have to divulge the information to this body. We say we want transparency. We need to show that with action, and that's what this resolution does. And for that, I ask for your support in this. Thank you.
Councilman Mendez.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. First, I'd like to thank Council Lady Vercher. Last week when this news broke, within hours, she showed the leadership as chair of Budget and Finance Committee by saying publicly that there ought to be an investigation into the facts. And this resolution accomplishes it. As she mentioned, for the different agencies that have been involved, they've got a different role. TBI looks into criminal matters, and there's no requirement for them to share their files with Metro.
The Metro Ethics Board is not an investigative body. They review facts that other people bring to them. Internal audit is a group that is best at measuring objective standards, and that leaves open looking at policies and compliance with policies. The job of the legislative branch, when allegations are made against the head of the executive branch, is without emotion to examine what happened and provide the facts for the community for the sake of transparency. We have a role here. I trust that if this resolution passes and the committee is appointed, that it will stay in its lane and let the TBI do its job and just gather the facts for the community so everybody can know what happens. I know that all our email boxes and voicemail have been blown up with people who really fundamentally want to know what happened. As Council Lady Virtue said, this isn't about anybody's personal life, but there are serious allegations that have been made about expenditures of taxpayer funds, and it's fair to want to get to the bottom of it. The sooner we start, the sooner we can get to the finish line and get back to running the city. And I know that's where we'd all rather have our energy than talking about this. So please support this resolution.
Councilman Glover.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. When I first saw this resolution, my initial gut was to say no. But I've talked to the District Attorney, General Funk, and frankly, I like the explanation that I'm hearing right now, that this is going to be a policy issue that we're looking at. It is not our job. We don't have the subpoena power to do the things that the TBI and the District Attorney is able to do. The other thing that I was very concerned with was, would we contaminate the investigation they're trying to do? Based on what I've heard tonight, I firmly believe we will not. We will not go down that path, and we will not venture into those waters. With that, I've changed my mind. I'm going to support the resolution because I think the worst thing that could happen out of this, perhaps, or maybe the best thing that could happen out of it, depending on what your thought pattern is we look at the policy on how we spend money, what the detail looks like, the various things that I feel like that we do need to look at. This has brought up, this has raised a number of questions that I think are legitimate in nature. And I applaud the fact that this is not a personal issue. This is a policy issue. And as long as we stay in that vein, I'm going to end up supporting this. Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Councilman O'Connell.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I fundamentally agree with the spirit of the sponsors of the resolution, particularly the two lead sponsors, Council Lady Virtue and Councilman Mendez. I think, though, as I read the resolution, this is not scoped in any particularly meaningful way other than, obviously you will have the personal power of appointment here, but I don't see many parameters applied to what happens once this committee is impaneled, and I don't know if you personally care to speak to that, or if Mr. Jameson might speak also to the ways in which we constrain this so that this is not just a thing that spirals out of control and actually offers us opportunities for less personal accountability within this chamber and loses our focus on the accountability of the executive that I absolutely agree is necessary to this moment. So, Mr. Vice Mayor, I would invite you, if you choose, or Mr. Jameson to comment on how we appropriately scope the work to be done here. Thank you.
The parameters are set forth in Section 1, which, in addition to setting forth the number of committee members, would appoint them to investigate, quote, the circumstances involving the travel and other expenses, including overtime expenses potentially related to the mayor's extramarital affair, to determine if there is any improper use of public money. That is the extent of the parameters set forth in the resolution.
And to be clear, my sense is, from what I'm hearing here, is that the council would expect me to appoint members who were deferential to the other investigations that are proceeding, so that nothing the committee did would in any way interfere or duplicate the investigations that are already, the other investigation that is already underway. So and I would have that conversation with the individuals before I put them onto the committee. That's my sense. Councilman Pauly.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I've certainly heard from my esteemed colleagues who support this and sponsor this resolution, for whom I have great respect, and I do understand their perspective. Mine is a bit different. I believe the citizens of the community, the council, Sergeant Forrest, Mayor Barry, we all deserve a thorough, objective, and professional analysis of the facts in this case. I think it's also very important, as it is in every other case where we see something of this nature that surfaces, that we do not prejudge the facts. And that has gone on to an extent, maybe not necessarily in this body, but in some of the reports I've seen. We certainly have several investigations already ongoing at the moment. The TBI, has been mentioned, is looking at this along with the DA's office. We also have an internal auditor who is looking into this. I know that several council members, myself included, requested that just today. I've also, and I want to point out that the internal auditor reports to an internal audit committee on which I believe we have council members sitting. So they will have certainly, they're privy to some, they're certainly privy to the investigation that's going on and conducted by the auditor. I've personally spoken with Chief Anderson, who has agreed to make himself and anything available from the police department that we want. Last year, we passed a bill that gave our internal auditor broad power to look into these matters like this. So we also, Councilman Mendez indicated that we have a board of ethical conduct to which evidence of any ethical breach can be submitted, on which we have another council member sitting. And I believe that council member was elected chair of the board of ethical conduct. So my concern about a council committee is several-fold. Number one, yes, we have the power and authority to enact a committee to look into this. There's probably a reason why, since that's been in the charter since 1963, it's never been enacted. Regardless of the good intentions, and I do fully believe that all of the members are well-intended here, I don't think you can keep the perception of politics out of this committee. I think that's a big concern. I also think it's very important to note that this council committee does not have the authority to issue any remedies or any sanctions in this matter. I believe that we should let everyone who is looking into this matter right now do their jobs objectively, professionally, and there's certainly nothing saying that we can't go back and look at this again in the future if we are not satisfied with what they have done. So I would just submit that I think we're a little bit premature here, and for that reason, I'm not going to support the resolution. Thank you.
Councilor Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I want to echo the comments of Mr. Pulley. He pretty much covered everything I was going to say. I'm not sure how we can objectively find any new information without duplicating efforts. I believe that the TBI is in a position to be more objective than us, and that if they are looking into illegality issues that involves the use of public funds, and that we would be best to let them complete their investigation first. If we do determine that we have not gotten sufficient evidence, we can make that decision at that point. I think we're premature. Thank you.
Councilman Bednarik.
Well, maybe I have a different history than most of you. I mean, I've seen people getting killed because of allegations, but everybody tells me, well, this is not Argentina, so we don't do that here. But people didn't do that in Argentina or in Venezuela before they started doing it. So the one thing that is, many things are great about this country, but the best thing is everybody is presumed innocent until proven guilty. To say that there is an allegation is not enough to establish culpability. I mean, we heard people complain about Schulman before. Did we start a committee complaining about Schulman? We heard about the vice mayor, the chief of police. Are we going to start an investigation when we hear any allegation from anybody? Let's let the TBI do its research. When we have some level of evidence, at that point, then we can start an investigation. Doing it right now is just pandering, I'm sorry to say that, to the people in Nashville that are like getting in their Facebooks and getting angry about a bunch of things with this mayor and just making that statement. I think we should wait. Our role is to be clear-headed and wait till we have some level of evidence, and at that point start an investigation. To do it now is just, with all due respect, it's just jumping the gun. I had something else in my head, but I'm very upset about this, so thank you. Please vote against it.
Councilman Withers.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I have been contacted by quite a few District 6 constituents. It doesn't mean that all of them feel that way, but quite a few of my District 6 constituents have reached out to me and had reservations about the committee being formed as a special investigative body, indicated that they wanted the TBI to do its work, and that we need to give things a little bit of time and process before we take radical measures. And that sort of is where I'm still inclined to be. I think Mr. Pulley brings up a really great point that we have been through some interesting times in Nashville, including with mayors and their behaviors in the past, but it doesn't seem that this particular step was taken even then. We may find that we certainly are justified in doing that today. I'm just not feeling that I'm there right now. I think that some of my colleagues had raised the perception of politics is true, and I think that we are, in many cases, reacting to the intense emotion that comes out of this, and Councilmember Virtue referenced the hurt and the heartbreak that we've had. Sometimes we need to step away from things for a little bit and take a break and let our heads cool a minute before we take a radical step. So that's where I'm at, is that we can revisit this in the future. Most of my constituent correspondence on this matter is that they feel that the administration has been forthcoming, that the investigations that are underway are uncovering information, and that many of my constituents don't feel that at this moment in time that this step is needed. And I'm just not ready to vote for this today. I might be at a different time, but I'm not ready to vote for this today.
Councilman Pridemore.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I agree with Councilman Pulley on several of the points. And I know one thing I've always wanted to say in this body, and that is I get to use my past experience to give my opinion. And I'm going to do that tonight. First of all, I want to indicate, as a colleague had mentioned about the ethical board, which at the end of their, if you want to call it an investigation, they make a recommendation. Same thing to the audit committee. They end up revealing and making a recommendation. One thing that I have experienced in my time as an investigator, and I'm sure there's two other ones in here that I know of, experience in law enforcement, is, and I've experienced a dual investigation where different entities are conducting an investigation at the same time. And one thing I can tell you, and I'm sure Chief Anderson can tell you also, is there's nothing clear about the results, because you have two different entities investigating in two different areas, and they 90% of the time, as we've experienced in some allegations have been made in other police investigations about when one agency is investigating it, along with a dual investigation from another agency, they do not provide or cooperate. So, and the bottom, if you do have the dual investigations, at the end of the day, you're going to have two results. So you're nowhere any clearer in what action to take than you did when you began, because you're going to you have to select, you're going to have to choose which results do you find are more viable. And I'm telling you, when that becomes, again, then it becomes another option for making the decision on the results. And three words, I was listening to everyone as they were speaking, three words that really, I think, well, you find out which one is the contradicting term. Independent, politician, and investigation. Those three don't go together. Everybody has an agenda. We all have an agenda. That's why we stand up here and you fight for your point of view. You fight for your constituents. You have an agenda. We need that independent party that does not have that agenda. All they're doing, they've been chartered to investigate, reveal, submit the facts, period. Nothing else. Then there'll be no question from another constituent or another council member or another agency. It will be an independent body. No questions. Thank you.
Councilman Shulman.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor, members of the council. We had a pretty interesting discussion in the Rules Committee that actually started with the council, with the question from Council Lady Karen Johnson. And it was talking about the reviews that are conducted by various agencies. And I know there's been a lot of discussion in here about that. It was basically the public nature of the review. So what we heard after talking to Mr. Jameson in the room was, and I just think it's important to know as we make a determination in here, Tennessee Bureau of Investigation is obviously a state agency. They've been requested to do this review through the DA's office. That information that they review, based upon my understanding of state law, is that they can determine what they release and what they can. I guess I'm looking for Mr. Jameson as a confirmation for that.
The Open Records Act provides that the TBI is exempted. I think it's the second agency that is exempt. They are required, if requested, to provide their results to the members of the General Assembly, not to the council, but otherwise they have an exemption under the Open Records Act.
All right, so if the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation does a review, we may or may not see the information that they've looked at. Same thing I think would go, based upon the conversation we had in the Rules Committee, that if the investigation is then turned over to the District Attorney's Office, they also have certain discretion about what they can turn over and what they can't.
Under the Tennessee Rules of Criminal Procedure, they generally apply a privilege to investigative files because for legitimate reasons. There can be sensitive witness identities, sensitive documents, and so forth.
Right. Okay. So what happened in the discussion of the Rules Committee is that, based upon my understanding of the resolution that is before us today, Council Lady Virtue's resolution, the review that we would have, if this were to pass, would be an open review. It's got the limited scope, but the information that we get would be open. We would get it. It would be open to us. The materials would all be open. People would be able to see it. Council members would be able to see it. There's an air of transparency for it or to it if we were to pass this. If we were to pass this type of resolution. Is that correct, Mr. Jameson?
Correct.
Okay. So anyway, I know we've been getting lots of emails and phone calls and everything else, but everybody seems to want to be transparent. Again, limited scope. There's a particular thing we have to look at. We're obviously accountable to the taxpayers for the use of public money. Council Lady Virtue's resolution opens that up. It keeps it transparent. People can understand nothing's behind closed doors. We actually open it up to the public, and that's why I can support this, because I think we want to see it open, we want to understand it, and then we want to get it behind us. Thank you.
I've got people in the queue who have already spoken. I'm going to try and go to people who have not spoken yet first, please. So, Councilor Blaylock.
Thank you. And especially for the viewing public, can we just get clarification that no matter what happens with this committee, that we have no authority, this body has no authority to make the mayor resign?
Generally correct.
Thank you.
Councilor Lady Weiner.
Thank you. Governance is hard, and governance is uncomfortable, and this is especially so. I'm the member of this body that's the chair of the Board of Ethics. And it's actually the Board of Ethical Conduct. Let me share with you exactly what we do and what we don't do. We don't investigate. We hear complaints once they are presented to the clerk and then are reviewed by legal to see if they rise to the level of needing to be heard as they violate a specific standard of conduct. So we do not investigate. Now, having said that, I think it's important to note that what this body should do is look at policies. Are policies needing to change? Are policies needing to be tweaked? How do we best address our fiscal responsibility to the taxpayer? Mr. Jameson, I do want to ask a question. In terms of the scope of what this committee would do, would this committee in any way potentially interfere with any proceeding that might go on in any other agency or court, for example?
It'd be hard for me to tell you one way or the other. Just the extent and scope of the investigations being conducted by the TBI, whether or not they would feel we were interfering, I just don't know.
Okay, thank you. At this point, you know, I'm torn. I know we need to do the right thing by the taxpayers to determine if policies have been violated. I'm concerned that the scope of the work of the committee may be expansive. I would be comfortable if we could maybe pare that down to be more specific so it wasn't so broad-based. But I do believe that we need to look at the policies and then let the agencies that are tasked with looking at the overarching issues as they relate to the TBI investigation and the internal audit. I think that we need to let them do their job. Thank you.
Councilman Hager.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. You know, I spent Thursday and Friday answering phone calls and emails about this situation. And I was in court Thursday, I was in court Friday, and trying to answer these for some of my constituents. And then I had to work on Saturday, go back into the office. As a practicing attorney, when something like this happens, the first thing I do is I take a step back, take a deep breath, and I analyze this situation. When I found out that General Funk was going to have the TBI investigate this particular matter, I was all for some type of investigation by this body, but with the TBI there, they are more independent organization that can make an objective review of everything involved here. If you remember, there was a case of the Holly Bobo case. Everybody remembers that case. And there was the TBI investigation along with the local police investigation. And there were some mistakes made along that way because there was a dual investigation going on. So, and I looked at things that we were going to look at. And of course, I looked up some of the employee conduct and general rules under section 6.1 and also the executive order of number 007 by Carl Dean about conduct of metropolitan employees, including the mayor's office and the mayor's staff. So there's two investigations here. Number one is there any type of misuse of funds? And the second would be the ethical code of conduct if it's been violated. So in my situation as a practicing attorney, I would ask the sponsor to continue this resolution for 2 or 3 meetings until we see how quick Tennessee Bureau of Investigation can come back with some investigation on this instead of trying to do a dual investigation. Thank you.
Councilor Emina Johnson.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'm supporting this resolution only because I think it as a council, our job to look after if public funding was improperly spent. That's it. That's the only scope I'm interested in. And I think a taxpayer of the Davidson County deserve that answer. So if we can quickly, swiftly establish yes or no, And then all other aspects, we can ask a professional to keep going. And as a result, that's, in my point of view, knowing that funding our authority to investigate in that portion, we should move swiftly, quickly, so we can move forward and do our job. And so that's the only reason I'm supporting this, and I think it's a fair way to moving forward.
Councilman Hastings.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a touching thing. One of the things that I wanted to say, what goes for one should go for all. We have been effective recently with some decisions on judges, council people, all of that stuff. I think the process should go on with what we have in scope. I'm not putting anybody in jail, or I'm not saying that somebody is wrong, but I am saying that there are some things that are in hand right now. We have to find a way to answer these questions. Now, I'm not sure if those of you who are council people who've gotten up today and who have said that their constituents are not complaining or they're saying other things. But gosh dog it, I get the emails, I'm getting the phone calls, and all of them are not my constituents. I get pulled over while I'm out. A matter of fact, I was at Metro Water yesterday, and there were 5 people who pulled me over and said, what is going on? I don't have the answer for them. I'm not a police officer. I'm not a private investigator. But if that was one of us, we would be in a place to where everyone would be investigating. Now, we have the power to do some things. I would suggest, I don't know if this is the right time. I'm not going to step out into that area. But one of the things I will say is whatever authority that we have as this body, we need to make sure we do the right thing at the right time to make sure that the people's dollars that are given to the city are put in the right place. So I beg you not only to throw it off, and I understand from a detective's area, I wouldn't want to walk in those shoes because I know none of us are going to fly to Greece to see how much money we're spent. But in the context of what the law says that we have authority to do, I think we need to do that. Again, time is the matter. Is this the right time? I don't know. But Councilwoman Virtue, I will support you by any means to make sure that we do the right thing by our constituents and by the people who are asking us right now to do something, or what are you guys going to do? Are you going to sit by and let the system continue to roll, or are you going to answer some questions for the people that you were elected by? Thank you.
Councilman Cooper. I'm sorry, Councilman, there you go.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor, and I would love for Councilman Mendez to follow on. You all kindly put us on the Internal Audit Committee, and I want to follow on with Council Lady Wiener's comments. The Internal Audit Committee, and as you know, we worked very hard to fund them better last June, and they are working hard to do that. But the internal audit is not the place. I would welcome Councilman Mendez's view on this subject too. They are fully committed with the resources that they have doing what we need them to do, and the kind of things that they are very good at and learning to be better at. Our job is to be accountable for all the money that we spend. That's our job, this group right here. We have tools to do it, and obviously Council Lady Wiener's committee is very important in safeguarding that, but the internal audit group, I think as a practical matter, is not the best tool for establishing accountability. But again, I'm saying this because you all very kindly put me on that committee, but again, I would like to yield to Councilman Mendez and his view.
Councilman Mendez?
I'll be on the shortened 2.5-minute clock.
That's correct.
All right, so first of all, on the internal audit point, yes, Councilman Cooper and I are 1/3 of the audit committee who the internal audit reports to. And the fact of the matter is, after serving on that for 2+ years, I think we're both aware of the strengths and limitations of internal audit. They're really good on checking frankly, just the gears of government, making sure that cash procedures are proper and that money's being counted right. This is not up their alley, and I would urge y'all to take into consideration that the 1/3 of the Metro Audit Committee is saying that internal audit's not the right person to have the lead role here. And the other thing that I'll want to address is the as a practicing attorney perspective. I'll toss my perspective in on that. It is unfathomable to me that you could imagine a client, presumably a corporation or a nonprofit, where the chief executive traveled internationally with a subordinate, and a lawyer would give the board, in this case the council, the advice of, you know what, I know law enforcement's looking into it, but you know what, just chill out, wait a couple months, you know, the board doesn't need to do any investigation. That's unfathomable. It's poor governance. The right thing to do, it's checks and balances 101. There are 3 branches of government, and unfortunately, we're all dragged into a situation where there are allegations regarding the chief executive, and it is our job, as I said before, to, without prejudice or emotion, to gather the facts. We are the place to do it. We've already heard from Council Lady Weiner that the Ethics Board isn't the right place to do it. The Internal Audit Department's not the place to lead this. The TBI is going to look at whether crimes were committed, which is not what we're concerned about. This is the place for us to do it. I urge us to support this.
Council Lady Henderson.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I rise in support of this resolution. I appreciate the perspective of all my colleagues. What I wanted to speak to, and Councilman Mendez has summarized it very well, but I felt some of my other colleagues were maybe getting a little off track as to the scope, and the scope is extremely limited. So I would just read for you: a resolution establishing a special committee to investigate the circumstances involving travel and other expenses, including overtime expenses potentially related to the mayor's admitted improprieties involving an employee of the Metro government, to determine if there was any improper use of public money. That is a very limited scope, colleagues, and for that reason, and all the other good points I made, that were made, I support this resolution. Thank you.
Council Lady Haywood.
I just rise to share that I'm the chair of the Rules Committee, and Council Lady Vircher came before our committee, and Councilman Mendez spoke on behalf of this resolution. He is the co-sponsor. And I would just like to rise and say that we voted unanimously in support of this resolution, and I felt that I would be remiss not to add that report.
Thank you, Council Lady. Councilman Scott Davis.
Just not to echo everything my colleagues have said, this is not easy, but sometimes as government, we have to do the hard jobs. But I want us to all take this as a learning curve. No matter how you go on this issue, number one, I have confidence in the Rules Committee and its leadership and pastorship. I have confidence in Councilman Mendez and Council Lady Weiner for their abilities. And I definitely have full confidence in our budget chair, Council Lady Tanika Vircher. Now, this is not a joke, but this is a very intelligent, powerful, and thoughtful young person that has risen to the occasion many times. And even though this is not easy for any of us, and no one takes pleasure, I support my colleague, and I'm trusting in my colleague. And I'm asking all of you, no matter how you feel, no matter how this vote goes, please support our colleagues that are making this hard and heavy decision. And I want us all to take an opportunity. Nobody wants to judge anybody, and I appreciate that with this council. But we need to do the same thing with all our constituents. You know, at times, and I'll admit, I'm guilty of calling, jokingly, other parts of town, hey, maybe certain issues aren't important. Hey, do they remember this? But we all have to remember, we're all Nashvillians. And right now, we should take this time to really heal some of these wounds that we're experiencing. I mean, we've had some tough issues, Airbnb, commercial businesses, and what we have to do right now is take out that time and tell each other that I love each other, that you love each other, and that you care. And also, we forgive, but we still have the fiduciary responsibilities, to our constituents, because we're all getting a million questions. And she is the budget chair, and she is in charge. She gets of the budget process when it comes to the Metro Council. And so we have to support her. And, she's going to get way more questions than we are because she is the budget chair. And I would not want to trade places with her for any amount of money in the world right now. So, Councilor Vercher, my hat is off to you and how strong and how brave you are. And you are a credit to the U.S. Navy and your service. Thank you.
Councilman O'Connell.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor, for returning to me just briefly. As a follow-up to what I was asking earlier, and I know, I think Councilor Henderson and I probably have different interpretation of what's possible there, right? Yes, the scope and language is there, but there's no timeline. I mean, we could be doing this 18 months from now based on the language that's in Section 1. So to that end, and wanting to make sure that this is, in fact, got some tight scope to it, I might ask Mr. Jamison to comment on, all right, this committee gets up and running. If that happens, what provision do we have, if any, as a council to come back and revisit it and say, look, this has potentially spun out of control, gone too far whatsoever? Is there some provision whereby we can come back and effectively decommission the committee?
As a practical matter, if you set time limits, not knowing what's ahead of you, that can come back to curse you.
Sure.
The resolution, I think, I don't want to speak for the sponsors, but I think what I've heard them express in committee meetings is that one of the key components here being the ability to retain additional personnel with the necessary budget. But that would come back before this council. For example, if an out-of-state auditing firm or an out-of-state law firm or some remote firm that had no connection here that could look at this dispassionately, before they're retained, that comes back before this body by resolution for purposes of, what are they going to cost? How long do they think this will take, et cetera?
I understand that. I think, though, my concern is more, let's say that people not on the committee determine that, or even some members of the committee determine that some of the lines of inquiry become frivolous, impertinent to the original scope, et cetera. What provision do we have to come back and say this committee is no longer serving its purpose? Is there some other power that we have to say we're going to stop the committee work?
Yeah, a separate resolution that terminates it.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Murphy.
I just want to follow up on Councilman O'Connell. I understand that we've talked about the potential fiscal impact, who could be hired out of, auditors, attorneys, all of those type of things. But do we have any idea of a fiscal impact or fiscal note here? I realize that a lot of times in our analysis that we receive from the council office, we have fiscal notes, and sometimes they give a range of how much things could cost. I'm concerned about using the taxpayer dollars on this when the comptroller's office may be investigating this already, the TBI is investigating this already, and General Funk will be looking at it, in addition to what the Ethics Commission, the committee can do as well. I have some concerns about spending additional taxpayer dollars when right now we are authorizing a committee that we're not authorizing a budget or a cap on that fund. I understand that contract will come back before us, but is there anybody in finance that might have experienced this before? Have we ever had an audit like this before? Or Councilman Counselor Jameson, can anybody give us an estimate of potentially what we're looking at potentially spending here?
I can't, and I can't for two reasons. One, I know the scope has been set forth in the caption and in section 1, but the actual parameters of where that would go, I couldn't begin to tell you where that might go. It turns out, I think I am responsible for a misstatement in the press that this has been attempted twice but never invoked. It turns out there was a use of this section in 1974. Marlene was kind enough to get me the file, but I have not looked at what the full impact of that was or who they retained, and I just don't have that information.
I did speak with some staff members in the comptroller's office yesterday and asked, typically, like when they do an audit of a local government, because that's what they are charged with doing and have experience doing, they said it could take anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks, somewhere around 300 man hours or worker hours, things like that. And I just want us to really consider the fiscal impact when maybe we want to wait and see if we need to duplicate these services when we're using taxpayer dollars, as we've already discussed tonight, potential hiring freezes and things like that. Thank you.
Councilman Pridemore.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I just have two short points, and they are to respond to one, has this ever been done before? I don't think not to this scale, but we mustn't forget about the Election Commission, where we had an audit done with the possible abuse of funds or credit cards. So that's somewhere, if I'm not mistaken, that was done when? Last term, was it not? And they ended up, we got an independent and honest result and opinion, and the facts were provided to the council. Also, when you talk about limited scope, here we go back to my experience again. Anytime you limit a scope of an investigation, you've handcuffed yourself, because there is no investigation, when you have limitations, it's going to take you places that you have to go to get the correct, the honest, and all of the information. You may get some of the information limiting to that point, but you have to dig deeper. And when you dig deeper and you're not entitled to go there, the wrong information is going to be fed back to whomever is going to receive that information. You're going to go places that are going to require you to go deeper. And if we're going to put limits and restrictions on it, that's even worse than not having one at all. So I just think we need to stick to an independent if you're going to have one, independent. I just keep using that word, and I just think that's what would, if we're going to do this, that would be the way to go. But that's just my opinion.
Councilman Glover.
Call the question.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Madam Clerk, if you open the machine. As a reminder, this requires 30 affirmative votes. There was only one other person seeking recognition. $10.82. Madam Clerk.
30 in favor, 7 against, and no abstentions.
Motion carries. That brings us to bills on introduction and first reading. Without objection, we'll take all bills on introduction and first reading except for BL 2018-1082. What? Is there a motion to approve? Second? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. BL 2018-1082, Councilman Freeman, an ordinance to amend Title 17 of the Metro Code of Laws, the zoning ordinance of the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County by changing from OR 20 to RS 7.5 and RS 7.5 to RM 20A zoning. Properties located at 467 and 469 Morton Avenue, approximately 195 feet east of Meade Avenue, 0.57 acres, all of which is described herein in proposal, et cetera, et cetera. Councilman Freeman.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. It's on first reading. Do I need to move the bill and then ask for indefinite deferral, or can I just do that?
Move for indefinite deferral.
I would like to move for indefinite deferral.
There's a motion to defer indefinitely. It's properly seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to bills on second reading. BL 2017-790, Mendez, Freeman, and others. Amends the Metro Code pertaining to health insurance benefit for members of the Metro Council after they leave office. This is a, this was indefinitely deferred previously, right? Councilman Mendez.
I'd like to move to withdraw this, sir.
Without objection, it's withdrawn. BL 2018-1054, Council Lady Vercher. Amends the Metro Code regarding leases of surplus property. Council Lady Vercher.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Budget and Finance recommended a one-meeting deferral, and I move for a one-meeting deferral.
Motion to defer. Council, let's get committee reports too. I'm sorry.
Budget and Finance recommended a one-meeting deferral, 12-4-0 against.
Thank you. There's a motion to defer one meeting. It's properly seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. BL 2018-1055, Councilman Glover. Gilmore and others, amends the Metro Code regarding agreements between Metro government and the Metropolitan Hospital Authority. Councilman Glover.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Committee reports, please.
Councilor Vercher.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Budget and Finance recommended approval, 12-4-0 against.
Councilman Glover.
Oh,
I'm sorry, Councilor Gilmore.
Okay.
Committee report, BL 2018-1055.
I think my committee report is up there, unfortunately. But it passed 7-0, and it was recommended to the general body. So thank you.
Motion, okay, Councilman Glover.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Without spending a lot of time, just let me make one final reason why, or a couple of reasons why I think this is important. First of all, it gives a realistic timeline for us to sit down and truly understand where we are. We saw the complexity of what we dealt with regards to the funding bill last night. I think the 3 hours we spent on a short-term solution certainly gives us the reason why we need to be very deliberate on how we go forward and what we do with the hospital. I'm not saying I'm for or against whatever solution we come up with, but I think this gives us a realistic timeline. So with that, I renew my motion and would ask for everyone to please support this. Thank you.
Motion to approve. It's properly seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Councilor Gilmore, you seeking recognition? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sometimes you gotta do that. Yeah. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. BL 2018-1057. Amends the Metro Code to clarify fees due upon landfilling, construction, and demolition waste by Council Lady Vercher, Councilman Elrod. Council Lady Vercher.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Budget and Finance recommended approval, 12-4-0 against.
Councilman Elrod.
Public Works recommend approval, 6 in favor, 0 against.
Council Lady Vercher.
I move for approval.
There's a motion to approve. It's properly seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. BL 2018-1058, Councilman Withers, Bednay, and Elrod abandons the existing easement rights for a portion of property located at 821 Porter Road. Councilman Withers.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. Could I get committee reports, please?
Councilman Bednay.
Well, we didn't have a quorum, Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Elrod.
Public Works recommend approval, 6 in favor, 0 against.
Councilman Withers.
I would like to move approval.
There's a motion to approve. It's properly seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. BL 2018-1059. Councilman Swope, Blaylock, and others abandons existing sewer main and easement and accepts new sewer main and any associated easements for property located at 5824 and 5832 Nolensville Pike. Councilman Swope.
Committee reports, please.
Councilman Bedney.
Turns out we have a quorum.
Councilman Elrod.
Public Works recommend approval, 6 in favor, 0 against, as amended.
Councilman Swope.
And I move approval.
It's a motion to approve. It's properly seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Bill 2018-1060, Councilman Bednay Elrod adopts the Geographic Information Systems Street and Alley Centerline layer with the recordation of renaming, additions, and deletions of acceptances and abandonments as reflected is the official street and alley acceptance and maintenance record of Metro government. Councilman Bednay. Working the crowd. Councilman Bednay. It's your bill, sir.
Committee report.
Councilman Elrod.
Public Works recommend 6 in favor, 0 against, as amended. And I think on 1059 we were supposed to adopt an amendment too. If I'm no.
No.
Okay, Marlene's usually right, and Elizabeth.
No, she's always right, sir.
Yes.
Councilman Bednay.
No quorum.
No
No,
quorum?
I move to approve.
There's an amendment.
There is an amendment. I move the
There's a
amendment.
motion to amend. It's properly seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. You're on your bill as amended.
Would you like a cookie?
Uh,
I move to pass the legislation as amended.
That's a proper motion. It's seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. BL 2018-1061, Councilman Bednay, Elrod, and Hager abandons portions of John L. Driver Avenue and 37th Avenue North right-of-way. Councilman Bednay.
Committee report.
Councilman Elrod.
Public Works recommend approval. 6 in favor, 0 against.
Councilman Hager.
Traffic and Park Commission approved, 4-4, 0 against.
Councilman Bednay.
I move for approval.
There's a motion to approve. It's properly seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to bills on third reading. BL 2017-579, Councilman Kendall and O'Connell. Changes 0.68 acres from RS5 to SP zoning for property located at 2805, 2807, 2809, and 2811 Delaware Avenue to permit up to 16 residential units. I don't see Councilman Kendall. Councilman O'Connell, you handling that?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Let's get committee reports.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Well,
yes.
Councilman Bednay had no quorum. Councilman O'Connell.
Councilman, may I have a cookie?
Councilman. Just have a seat, sir.
In speaking with the sponsor, and I had been on this bill previously when it came up, and it has been brought back, but the lead sponsor did request that we defer this one meeting, so I'd like to move for a one meeting deferral, please.
Motion to defer one meeting is properly seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. BL 2017-1026, Councilman Scott Davis. Changes 0.68 acres from RS5 to RM20A zoning for property located at 1308 Montgomery Avenue. Councilman Scott Davis.
I think because we had the planning core, I think we need to suspend the rules. Is that correct, sir?
There's a motion to suspend the rules. Is there objection? There is objection. Proper motion would be that's deferred by rule then. Deferred by rule. BL 2000, Councilor Hurt, were you seeking recognition? It's going to be deferred by rule, but all right. It'll be on the agenda at the next meeting. BL 2017-1031, Elrod Gilmore and others adopts a transit improvement program for Metro government and approves a surcharge for the program and requests the Davidson County Election Commission to call a countywide referendum election to be held on May 1, 2018 regarding the levying of the surcharge on certain taxes to fund the program. Excuse me, Councilman Elrod.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I move approval on third reading with a brief with an explanation.
It will be no longer than 5 minutes. Floor is yours.
Don't tempt me. Everyone knows what this is. This is the ordinance that puts the Let's Move Nashville plan on the ballot for all of Nashville to approve. This does not approve the transit plan. This does not say we're for or against the transit plan. This is a vote to put this before the voters. This is a process that has been many years in the making, from Nashville Next, in motion, moving forward, dozens of community meetings, thousands of community engagements. And the result of this is a bold plan that in today's dollars would cost $5.4 billion to build. It would have 76 residents and 89% of the jobs in Davidson County upon its completion be within less than a mile, a half a mile or less from a transit stop, from a transit line. To pay for this, to pay for the plan that includes more buses, that will go longer hours, more frequent stops, light rail down 5 corridors of Nashville, and a transportation plan downtown that would remove congestion of transit as well. It is paid for by federal funding, but also would increase several taxes, and in the interest of transparency, I want to make sure that I mention these. The sales tax would be raised half a cent upon its passage and raised to a full cent in 2035, or 32, excuse me. The hotel motel will be increased 0.25% now and 0.375% in 2032. Business tax would have a 20% surcharge, and car rental fees would have a 20% increase. I know there were many folks in the community, myself included, after last week's announcement, there was concern about what it would mean for a lot of issues facing our city. And I think the number one issue facing us as a city, I know that I wanted to try to work on as a councilman, was traffic, was transportation, and was investing in transit as a city. There's a lot going on as a city. We have the hospital. We have an investigation going on. We have a lot of things going on as a city, but the number one issue that we need to deal with, and I think our constituents and our voters expect us to deal with, is traffic, is transportation, is the basic thing of making sure that folks can get around town in an efficient manner. So because of that, even with the announcement from last week, this city has to go forward with transit, has to go forward with addressing this. Our constituents and our voters and Nashvillians do not expect us to put the city's business on hold, no matter what is going on. That is what I think we have been elected to do. Tonight, I ask for your approval of this ordinance with no amendments. And with that, Mr. Vice Mayor, I renew my motion.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. 5 county-wide elected officials came together with an amendment, and I'd like to defer my time to Bob Mendez to talk about the amendment that the 5 of us elected countywide came together on. Thank you.
Councilman Mendez.
I could get used to this. So there's an amendment. First, move the amendment.
This motion to amend is properly seconded.
All right. And if I may comment, this basically changes 2 things. One, the Improve Act passed by the state requires that the referendum language identify any sources of funding. And so we added debt to the list of the sources of funding, which wasn't in the previous version. The second thing that this does is to add language saying that the program is estimated to require $8.9 billion in revenue through 2032. We view this as compromise language that, as Councilman Cooper mentioned, the 5 at-large candidates have come up with. The last version a few weeks ago said the total cost of the plan was $8.9 billion, and I've shared with many that I think that was inaccurate. This formulation that says the program's estimated to require $8.9 billion in revenue through 2032 is accurate and complies with the Improve Act in all ways. The 5 of us are trying to step forward in finding compromise language on this that will address the concern of many constituents that this cost through 2032 be included And we think this is clear language and complies with the Improve Act, and we ought to do it. You know, I know there's going to be probably parliamentary moves to try to shut down this conversation and this amendment. The reality is that refusing to entertain even an accurate description of the $8.9 billion leaves the impression with the electorate that it's a close vote, that if we say $8.9 billion, it's going to lose. At this point, the conversation's gone on so long about this that we need to just go ahead and include the words. And what are we afraid of with the words? If it's accurate and it complies with the Improve Act, then let's just go ahead and say it. I think that we give off the wrong impression to the electorate if we push really hard to just not even say the words. The Transit Improvement Program, which, by the way, Section 1 of the legislation says, the first words in this is, the Metropolitan County Council hereby approves the program attached here to as Exhibit A. The Exhibit A is a 55-page document, and it clearly indicates that the revenue needed through 2032 is $8.9 billion. All we're trying to do is to move that out of page 50 of the attachment into the referendum language. Please support the amendment.
Councilor Ely.
I'm sorry, my comments were on the original and not the amended language.
Okay. I'm going to leave you in the queue then. I'll come back to you after we deal with the amendment. Let's see, Councilman Glover.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. You know, my constituents have been very clear with me to not support this. However, if we are going to be transparent, and I think we've taken a big step tonight to become transparent. If we're going to be transparent, and if we adopt this amendment, I will end up voting to put it on the ballot for May. Otherwise, I can't, because I don't think we've been truthful. I don't think we've told people what the real cost is. I'm not certain, as I run the numbers, I even agree with the $8.9 billion. I think it will far exceed that number when all is said and done. However, if we take this step tonight, and we are being I think much more transparent about what the possible cost is going to be, and start giving a more realistic number, then I will be supportive and vote to put it on the ballot for the May vote. Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Councilor Henderson.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I rise in support of this amendment. I supported Mr. Cooper's amendment on, Councilman Cooper's amendment on second reading, but at that time, as Mr. Mendez alluded to, I did have some concerns as to the clarity of the language. And at that time, I called for colleagues to try to arrive at a compromise that brought clarity and transparency to this conversation. I would invite all my colleagues, this is on page 43 of your amendments packet. So please do open it up and read it. I think it makes the ballot language very clear. I think this has inappropriately been referred to as some sort of, sandbagging effort by sharing the $8.95 million amount, and that is false. As Councilman Mendez said, it's on page 50 of the appended transit plan to this referendum. This is just bringing it forward for clarity and transparency for our constituents, and I really don't know how we can say that we would not support this. Thank you.
Councilor Amina Johnson.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I would like to thank 5 at-large members to come up with this clear, precise language to accurately describe the project. And last meeting, I opposed the amendment language because the language offered at that time was not clear enough and not accurately described the scope of the project. However, this amended language will accurately describe, because we do need dedicated funding source. So $8.9 billion, if we were to accomplish everything on the project by year 2032, that's the revenue we will need, minimum, and including federal funding and so forth. So it's not all tax dollars or added surcharge. So like Councilmember Elrod said, this is not for us to approve the project or not. This is for us to put the amendment and referendum on May ballot. So for that, with clear, precise language, voter will know what kind of referendum they are voting for. So this clear language will very precisely describe what kind of referendum they will be voting for, instead of they have to read 55 pages of addendum. So for that reason, I am supporting this amendment. So I hope everybody else will support this amendment.
Councilor Lee Weiner. Again, there are people in the queue who have spoken before. It's important. I'm going to make sure everybody gets a chance.
That's okay. I'll be quick. Thank you. I sponsored this originally because I believe in democracy. And in a democracy, we allow the voters to vote. And we need to follow through with that promise. And that's what a referendum is about. However, I also believe in clarity. And so I will support this going on the ballot. I will also support the amendment. Thank you.
Councilman Schulman.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor, members of the council. I was sitting here listening to everybody, and I thought Council Lady Amina Johnson did an excellent job of explaining it. I always remind people when I talk to people that this is probably, and I think it is, the largest project in Metro history. And so I think what Councilman Cooper, Councilman Mendes, Council Lady Hurt, Council Lady Gilmore, and I were all trying to do was just put the numbers in that were in the report. They're the correct numbers. That's what actually was in the report. So they're in the plan. So all there was an effort to put them in the resolution, what people will be voting in. So it's not numbers that we came up on our own. This is just numbers that were in the plan. That's the thing. This is the largest project in Metro history. We need to be transparent with the voters. We need to tell people, and this is what Council Lady Amina Johnson, I thought, said very, very well. We need to tell people what they're voting for. And so this just puts that information in. And I would stress, because I don't plan to get up again, depending if we put this on the ballot tonight, if we go ahead and do it, I've talked to a number of groups lately that don't know what's in this thing. And just in terms of talking to various groups, I talked to a group of about 120 people last week. There were 4 people that actually knew what was in this thing. Talked to a group last week. There were about 60 people in the room. 2 people raised their hand. They don't know what's in it. So one of the major things that I think we're all responsible for, including all the council members in here, is if we put it on the ballot, regardless of the amendment or not, we have work to do. We have work to do to make sure that people understand what they're voting for. And so there are forms being looked at, things like that. But if we put it on the ballot, we got about 3 months to make sure that in terms of voting on something that is so important, that we make sure that we explain and answer people's questions. That's very important. Thank you.
Councilor Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I appreciate the efforts at transparency. That's clearly something that's important to all of us. I have questions about how clear and precise this $8.9 million is. That's a number on page 50 of the report, but it's made up of the numbers on page 49 of the report, where it does specifically give the cost at $5.3 billion in today's dollars, which is dollars that I can understand, for the light rail and for the bus improvements. It breaks that down and shows exactly what it is. It also, in the next column, shows what that is in the dollars from the year of expenditure, but I have no idea what the inflation factor is that's gone into that. If you go to page 50 and you see that $8.9, it includes an inflated inflation factor. I don't know what the inflation factor is. It includes the finance cost, but I don't know what the interest rates were for that finance. I say that that number, 8.9, has more mysteries in it than the 5.3 billion that is clearly spelled out in how that is derived as a capital cost. And secondly, the 99 million for operating costs is clearly spelled out on, I've lost the page number there, but it's on another page of that same report. I believe that it is more transparent, more easy to understand, and possibly more in line with the language of the Improve Act of showing what the capital cost is and the annual operating cost in the bill, and that including this cost with the 8.9 million and saying that is the total cost and that's the total cost that the taxpayers will have to bear leaves an awful lot of information out that can be found if you go to this report, if you need to know where that comes from. But to say that's the total cost, I believe, is misleading and confusing. I think to say that it's the cost to taxpayers when some of that actually is coming from the airport, some of that could be coming from federal government, and there's reason to believe that that's possible to get that. I think that those numbers have an awful lot of questions in them, and that it is not as clear and precise, and that it will lead to greater confusion, that we do a better job of informing the electorate about what they're voting for if we give them two simple numbers in today's dollars without assumptions about inflation and interest rates, and then drive our constituents to this report or give them summaries. That page is an excellent one to put in information, but I think that it's not appropriate to put into the language of the referendum where you've only got 230 words to explain, and you simply can't get all that other information in there. I don't support this amendment. Thank you.
Councilman Hager.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I've tried to explain to everybody and my constituents that what we're voting on tonight is to put this on the ballot and let the voters vote for this. Some of you were here back when the NFL football stadium came here, and that was put to a referendum vote because we were taking money out of water revenue, and that was put to the on the ballot for the voters to vote on, and it passed. When I look at this transit bill and I look at other cities that have the mass transit, if you look at Charlotte, North Carolina, that particular rail system they had there cost approximately $140 million a mile. So when you start putting the numbers as to the mileage of how many miles of rail we're going to put on here in addition to the bus service, this amendment at least gives the voters an idea of exactly what this is going to cost, not only now but in the future. Also, what this does is tell us, or the voters, what the subsidized cost is going to be as well. A lot of the voters don't realize how much that we pay in subsidized costs for the Music City Star and everything else. As we know, mass transit normally does not make money. As such, my position is that I want it to go on the ballot for the voters to vote it, but at the same time, I want transparency and honesty as to how much this is going to cost. So I'm going to support this amendment. Thank you.
Councilman Sledge.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. And I rise against the amendment, but for some reasons that I think are a little bit different than what's been expressed. I think the language of this amendment represents something of a different worldview than the current amendment does. If you look at the way that the language is expressed, instead of placing things like grants and revenues at first, it places tax surcharges and debt first. It emphasizes, I think, the funding that is required, but it does it in a way that I'm not sure is totally accurate. And I know we're talking about transparency and everything, but if we're really going to bring up debt and tax surcharges and all that sort of thing, I'm surprised that we wouldn't want to go forward and say, well, here's the revenues we expect to produce from labor, from increased labor, right? Here's what we expect to produce from all the positive economic impacts. And so, unfortunately, and I don't think it's the intent per se of the sponsors, but I think this amendment puts forth a connotation with this bill and with the transit referendum, quite frankly, that I don't think we want to intend to place in. There's a couple of other technical things that are in here. This bill specifically notes that there is a tunnel connection. This amendment does. The bill, as we're looking at it right now, does not say a tunnel connection. It says a connection. I prefer that flexibility, quite frankly, to not be tying ourselves as voters to a tunnel connection that goes through downtown, because I think we all know that's the most costly part of this proposal and probably the one that's going to cause the most questions, at least from an engineering standpoint. I don't understand why we're making these changes, at the last minute that seem to fundamentally change the tone of the referendum. I don't think that it's done in a way that's meant to be negative, but I think it presents that opportunity. And to one of my previous colleagues' statements, I do think it's going to be used as a political weapon, and I think it's going to be used that way either way. If it's placed in this language, it's going to be used by opponents of the full transit plan to say, hey, look, there's a number. If it's not placed in, the opponents of the transit plan are going to say, well, they refuse to tell you the real number. So I don't think that we can place this in and expect people to say, all right, well, we're okay with the language. These lines are pretty clearly divided, guys. And I think if we're honest with ourselves, I think we know that to be the case. I would hope that we would not approve this amendment. One last note, we have another amendment to consider. And I think that amendment's pretty important for completely different reasons. That second amendment does not have this number in it. It does not have the second number in it. So if we go to approve Amendment A, and then we look at Amendment B and think, well, that's a pretty important thing to put in Amendment B, well, we've just reversed what we just did. So I really think we need to take a good, hard look at what we're doing and make the right decision. I would ask that you vote against the amendment. Thank you.
Councilman Anthony Davis.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'll be quick. I think Councilman Sledge said it all too well. I'm also speaking against the amendment. This whole time, basically, my mantra has been, let's just get this to the ballot, let our voters decide, let our constituents decide. And to me, it also just feels a little last minute, as he said, confusing to the voter. We've had this $5.4 billion that is the true capital cost that we've been talking about for several months. We've voted on it twice to have that language on the ballot. And it's the true capital cost and price tag for the project out of the gate. So there's other issues with the amendment, but that's why I'm going to continue to hold my no vote on the amendment and support this going on the ballot as we have done in the last two meetings. Thank you.
Councilman Elrod.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I move to table the amendment, and I will give a brief explanation why. This amendment has been stated, as stated by Councilman Sledge and others. I truly believe the intentions of the amendment sponsors, that they are trying to be transparent and have full disclosure. However, through this amendment, as was stated also by Councilwoman Allen, is obfuscation, I believe, through transparency. That just because that a number is in the transit plan does not mean that it can be fully explained in 23 or 230 words. That I think, as Councilwoman Allen said well, that I think a voter that goes in the voting booth could read the $5.3 million, and the program is estimated to require $8.9 billion in revenue, that it takes a lot of explanation to get there, to realize that there's federal funds included in that there's other things that are going on that people are going to say, well, it takes this amount of revenue, but it costs this to build. So the number that we always use for projects, whether it's building a school, whether it's building the convention center or something like that, is it costs this amount of money. And it has always had in the plan that it costs $99 million a year, $100 million a year to operate. You know, say you were going to go buy a car from, I don't know, Beaman Toyota. And you were going to go, you're going to have a certain number that you buy that car for. But it's not going to include how much the gas is for the next 20 years that you're owning the car. It's not going to include how much the tags are for the next 20 years, how much it is to clean for the next 10 years, or how many oil changes you're going to have and how much that's going to cost. And I think Councilman Sledge also made a good point, that an email was sent out by an opponent, a group that is an opponent of this transit plan. No matter what the number it has in there, it could be $0 if this is free to the taxpayers and they are opposed to this transit plan. It said embrace this amendment. Embrace this language, because it's going to be used against us no matter what. If we vote against it today, against this language, we're not for full transparency. If we vote for it and it goes on, we're for this great big number that escalated all of a sudden once it got to the council. So I would ask that you vote for the tabling motion. Thank you.
Councilman Cooper, it was on your time, but I think Councilman Mendez actually made the motion. So under our rules, it will come back to Councilman Mendez.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. You know, this It's just like buying a car thing that the chamber has come up with is another, I mean, I have a hard time buying it. You know, we're not buying a car. We're buying a 5 or 10 billion, depending how you look at it, operating company. And again, nobody, when buying an operating company, would say, you know what, I want to know what I want to pay up front. That's not the way it works. The way it works if you're buying an operating company, a giant multi-billion-dollar operating company, is you need to know how much you put down, how much in debt, what the terms of the debt service are going to be, and how many years you're going to pay it back. You know, not in the 55-page plan is that the revenue bond debt balance in 2032 is going to be $3 billion, and that the sales tax revenue isn't going to be high enough to pay full principal and interest payments till 2040, and the bond debt doesn't get paid off till 2060. You know, that information is out there, hard to find in the 55 pages. The reason why this is last minute is because compromises happen at the last minute. The $8.9 billion number was good enough for the independent CPA firm and good enough for the comptroller to make it into the approved 55-page plan. We are taking it word for word, moving it from page 50 into the actual referendum language. You know, I showed up in the Tennessee Star yesterday in an article saying I was one of the staunchest supporters of the referendum, and I've got others at pro-transit coalition people saying that I'm opposed to it. I'm happily staking out the ground of providing facts, being in the middle. I'm neither for or against right now. We're talking about what we're putting on the ballot, and as long as it's truthful and in how we characterize the $8.9 billion and the way that it is in our amendment is truthful, complies with the IMPROVE Act, then what's the difference? It's language that works. It's not confusing. It was good enough for the CPAs. It represents a compromise. Let's put it up on the ballot. Now, tabling motions, we inevitably get Mr. Vice Mayor, how do I vote? So let me take a preview so he can repeat it. If you want to have continued conversation on the biggest investment in the history of Metro, then you will vote no on the tabling motion. If you'd like to cut to the chase and just get out of here, then vote in favor of it. But I would urge you to vote no on the tabling motion.
All in favor? Opposed? Let's go to the machine. Just so you know, I mean, when the tabling motion was made, I don't think anybody else was seeking recognition, but who am I to get in the way of a good debate? If you want to vote with Councilman Cooper, you're going to, Mendez, et cetera, you're going to vote no. If you want to vote with Councilman Elrod, et cetera, you're going to vote yes. That's really what you got to remember. Madam Clerk.
15 in favor, 22 against, and 1 abstention.
Motion fails. Councilman Bednay.
So how much money does Councilmember Mendez get on contributions? We don't know. When we go to the voting machine, we just vote Mendez, or we vote Cooper, we vote somebody else, but we don't get all that information, and yet we inform ourselves. We can go online, do research, find out how much money one side gave him, how much money the other side gave him, and we can make an informed decision. Not all the information for us to vote on an issue is going to be on the machine when we go vote. But I think it puts very little trust on the voters of Davidson County to assume that because it's not on that ballot there, that people are not going to know what they are voting. So I think we have the ability to research and find out, you know, what is the real cost of any issue and then make an informed decision. So I don't think we need to pack information on something that is already available. And so I'm against this amendment.
Councilman Mendez, you're still showing up here. You're seeking recognition. Councilman Glover, on the amendment. Yeah, we don't need to. You're the last one. All in favor? Opposed? Let's go to the machine. This is on the motion to approve the amendment. I think that's everybody.
21 in favor, 16 against, and 1 abstention.
Motion carries. Is anyone else seeking recognition? Council Lady Lee, I know you were seeking recognition before.
Okay, you've got me confused now. I was seeking I was seeking to speak on the overall, not on the amendment.
That's where we're back to that now.
So now we're back to that. And so in that case, I am standing for, to vote for that. I've had quite a few of my constituents to call me and talk to me about, some did not want the transit thing, some wanted the transit thing, some wanted the transit thing, but they didn't want it where we were going to put it. So I'm hoping that this will help to bring some jobs into our city, and we will have Nashvillians on this job. But the main thing that I want to say is, whether you are for it or against it, I think we need to put it out there and let the people speak on what they want. So I support this being put on the ballot so that my constituents can say what they want, what they don't want, and if they're listening now, then I hope they will talk to other folks and come out and bring them to vote with you, so you'll have that chance to vote on it.
Councilman Elrod.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I misspoke a few minutes ago about no amendments. I pledged to Councilman Davis. He does have a second amendment, and it is attempting, I think, to take care of an important situation as far as our bus drivers and, taking care of those and that organization going forward. So I want to ask Attorney Jamison, is there a way that we could take the language that he suggests to add and that he has to add in the body of the referendum, to add that as a whereas clause, as an encouragement of metro government going forward, that we use the Davidson Transit organization, excuse me.
As a pure recital, yes, possibly. The problem with including that within the actual summary language that goes on the ballot is twofold. First, if I could back up and explain what the amendment does. The amendment would require that this transit system be managed by one management structure, that is the Davidson Transit Organization, which has essentially managed the transit system here since the early 90s by contract with the MTA. The twofold problem with that is that the charter gives exclusive authority to MTA to operate public transit systems. We could not mandate that through legislation otherwise. The secondary problem, according to Mr. Bland, is that the DTO does not have the ability to accept federal funding, and because that is such a significant component of the funding of this program, that would be problematic if included within the Transit Improvement Program summary. If you were envisioning a recital, however, that just said MTA should use its best abilities to eventually retain Davidson Transit Organization in the future, that could work, but it cannot be binding and could only be part of the recitals.
Thank you, Mr. Jamison. I would so move, I suppose it'd be a late filed amendment to make such a recital in the whereas clauses at the beginning of the ordinance.
So you would first move to suspend the rules.
I move to suspend the rules.
Is there objection? I'm not sure I understand what the amendment is, sir. I mean, somebody's got to clear this up for me.
My understanding from what Councilman Elrod has stated is that looking at the amendment language proposed by Councilman Davis, changing that instead to simply within the recitals clause, within the paragraph that begins whereas, and simply state something non-binding to the effect that MTA would use its best efforts to continue employing Davidson Transit.
Look, I withdraw my motion with a brief explanation. This is something that I committed to Councilman Davis. He expressed his interest to try to work in and take care of our bus drivers, the Davidson Transit Organization. However, I don't want to put in jeopardy federal funding or any kind of other legal issues that we might have with this going forward. I commit after this. I think something that's important with this process is after we pass this ordinance tonight, and when it goes on the ballot and hopefully passes on May 1, is there are a lot of issues we're going to have to take care of and look at. And I think this is one of them. Also working, with other groups in the community, CLC and that kind of thing. So I would withdraw that, but I want to commit to Councilman Davis to work on a resolution to this effect of something like that, perhaps at the next meeting. I know he was trying to do it at perhaps this meeting, but it would have been a late filed resolution. So I withdraw my motion.
Councilman Scott Davis.
I want to thank Councilman Elrod for clarifying that. One thing that I feel that we got caught up in this, that we forgot about our bus drivers. We forgot about the men and women that get us to work every day, who 90% live in Davidson County. And what we don't know, but we all should know about the Davidson organization that has been managing our transit system for over 25 years here in the city. They're certified in driving light rail, train, trolley, and buses, and they do the maintenance. Now, we've had one of the best and safest transit organizations here for the last 25 years. Now, I too don't want to jeopardize any kind of funding. Now, originally, we can move this to the whereas clause to not jeopardize, our funding. It won't be on a ballot, so it won't jeopardize, our funding. However, though, by keeping us at one management system for the transit, it saves us a lot of money. In other cities, when people have not done this, you've had one organization running the train, another organization running the bus, another trolley or light rail, which causes the city and the taxpayers more money. By using one management system, how we're doing right now, it will save us more money in the long run. Also, it'll let our bus drivers know and our maintenance workers that keep the buses going and who could also do the maintenance on the light rail and other forms of transportation, that we care about them and that we're willing to protect their jobs and protect them for the future. Now, a lot of us out here have always said, we love and we care about our bus drivers. I don't see the harm, and Mr. Jameson, I will refer for clarity just to make sure, that by putting the whereas in the language, it's not on the ballot, correct, sir?
That is correct.
Okay. And by putting it there, it does not jeopardize our funding.
That is correct. I understood Councilman Elrod to have withdrawn the amendment motion, however. I may be confused, but that's what I understood.
Let's vote on it. I made a promise. Let's. I like to renew my motion.
We need to suspend the rules. There's not a written motion. There's not a written amendment, so you need to move to suspend the rules. There's nothing before the council.
I withdraw my motion.
Thank you. Councilor Van Rees.
If I understand correctly, he just withdrew his
Correct.
motion, so I don't need to talk anymore.
No one
Thank
else
you very
seeking,
much.
no one else seeking recognition. Madam Clerk, if you'll open the machine. This is voting on the ordinance as amended. Madam Clerk? Whenever you're ready.
Thirty-four in favor, 2 against, and 2 abstentions.
Motion carries. BL 2018-1041, Councilman O'Connell, Vercher, and others, approves a lease agreement between Metro and Jocelyn Sign and Maintenance Company Incorporated for property located at 630 Murfreesboro Pike for parking purposes. Councilman O'Connell.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I'd like to move approval.
Motion to approve is properly seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Council Lady Blaylock seeks recognition. Council Lady Blaylock.
Thank you. I just wanted to shed a little light on Nashville and say that my mother-in-law and father-in-law are celebrating their golden 50th anniversary. So I just wanted to say congratulations.
Stay with me, guys. Stay with me. You got a couple of other people. Council Lady Karen Johnson, quickly. You got 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, go.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'm just wanting to make an announcement for District 29 and Southeast Nashville that our planning meeting for the Southeast Nashville Egg Hunt and Festival is this coming Saturday, February the 10th, from 10 a.m. to 12 noon at the Southeast Library Community Center. Look for the signs, 5260 Hickory Hollow Parkway. And we do have 2 presenting sponsors, Janney King and HCA TriStar Hospitals.
Thank you. Council Lady Vercher.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I want to extend this invitation to all members of the annual Minority Caucus reception, which will be next Monday. We'll be honoring Dr. Lois Jordan, the first woman elected to council, and Senator Thelma Harper. We will have Mayor Wayne Messam, president of NBC Leo, National League of Cities, will be our keynote speaker. Also want to give a shout out to What's Poppin'. They provided the popcorn back in the break room today. Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Council Lady Henderson.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Colleagues, if you could just give me your attention, please, because I would like to thank one of our fellow Metro colleagues who is sadly departing us, Miss Carrie Logan, who works so admirably for our planning office. Carrie, I did not get the opportunity when we passed our sidewalk legislation to fully acknowledge how integral you were to that process. Colleagues, we lose a real asset in Metro government on February 16th. Ms. Logan's knowledge from a policy perspective has really been amazing and so wonderful for our city. Thank you so much,
Council Lady Gilmore.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I just wanted to, announce for tomorrow that Dr. Bruce Siegel is going to be at Tennessee State University. He is the CEO of America's Essential Hospitals. We're asking all council members to come out. He's going to be there from 3 to 4 p.m. at the Robert Murrow Floyd Payne Campus Center, room 210.
Thank you.
Thank
Is there
you.
a motion to adjourn? So moved. We're adjourned.
So moved.
I'm not going to do that anymore. There are too many of those.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.